All right, so welcome everyone to the LPC Executive Committee meeting for Thursday, June 1st, 2023 at 6:30 Pacific Daylight Time. If the secretary, oh, I haven't even done that yet, man. All right, I was busy preparing the gavel, but I wasn't actually going to use it yet. And oh, here we go, treasurer's just joined us. So perfect timing. I will officially call the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Malagon.
Present.
Elfstad.
Present.
And I am present. Mr. Regier.
Present.
Mr. Butts.
Here.
Ms. Stump.
Present.
Mr. Ham. There, he's just muted. Mr. Ham, can you unmute yourself?
Or use the
back.
chat as well. I know he's at an event right now for San Diego County, I believe. So
Okay. Mr. Alvarez.
Here.
He's here too. Okay. Mr. Brown.
Present.
Ms. Hallisey.
Present.
Ms. Lepacek.
Present.
Mr. Lima. He's trying to say something. Mr. Minnelletti.
yeah, he's saying he's here, but guess it's not working.
Your
I
mic's
got
not
the gist of
working, Lima, just so you know.
Mr. Minnelletti, you're here. No, his mic might not be working either, but I know he just unmuted himself. Mr. Nichols.
Here.
And Mr. Strachan.
Present.
Mr. Jimenez. No, and Mr. Gorsh. No. Okay. That completes the roll.
Sorry, I didn't
Fantastic.
hear my name called.
Oh, you came in
Who was
after the fact. That's
That was
fine. We
Garrison?
can confirm Mr. Ham again. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Ham, you're present.
Yeah, I'm present.
There we go.
Fantastic. So who do we have missing? Just the alternates, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right, cool. Almost a full XCOM here. So we'll move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda. I did send out several drafts, the most recent one being this morning. Did everyone have a chance to look it over? Is everyone okay with the agenda as it is? Okay, so it seems like we're good there. I will go ahead and move to adopt the agenda as submitted then. Is there a second?
Second.
I heard Mr. Ham first, so we'll go with Mr. Ham. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to adopting the agenda as is? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. We'll go ahead and move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment. We do have a few members of the public here. Would anyone wish to speak during this time? Going once, going twice.
Real quick, Adrian. Since Scott,
Mr. Butts,
since
Mr.
Scott
Butts, let's wait until you're addressed first. So
Mhm.
hand raised, that's good. Second part, Mr. Butts, go ahead.
All right. So Scott Mandel wasn't able to make the meeting tonight. I invited him out and to speak to us during public comment. I suppose he has his neighborhood council meeting tonight as well, so I guess that's where he's at. So I'm just going to read his reply to my invitation. He said I'll try to make it. Let's see. Oh, he says he's a bit disappointed in the lack of interest from the LP and the Los Angeles neighborhood council system over the years. He said he's tried over the last 5 years or so to try to get people to get people interested in pushing libertarians on the neighborhood council levels within Los Angeles. something about the DSA knows how important this is at the grassroots level, but it doesn't seem that the LP does. Of course, you know, this is a new LP now. I've worked on, I helped Scott and Nils and a couple other people in Los Angeles, these neighborhood councils. They have a lot of power within their communities in Los Angeles, to be that bulwark against, you know, the LA City Council. Yeah, I'd like to, you know, try to push people into running those positions in LA County. Yeah, that's all Scott had in his email.
Okay, I'd encourage you to ask Mr. Mandel to reach out to the chair of LA County, Mr. John Dew, and perhaps even the CSC. If he's looking for some sort of support or a network, we can see what we can do on that front. As far as finding candidates, it's always a tall order for libertarians. We'll do what we can in that respect, but I'd encourage him to start local and try with the chair of LA County, Mr. John Dew, and then contact other people as necessary. And also, you know, he's welcome to address us should he be able to join us in the future. But before we move on to anything else, just want to make sure that the secretary has, someone just came in, Jesse from San Diego. Would you mind saying your last name just so that you're recorded in the minutes, please?
Jesse Thomas.
Jesse Thomas, thank you so much. Okay, is there any other public comments? Going once, going twice. All right, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. If someone, I should have done this earlier, but I guess it may not even come to this, but, and then Mr. Charles Bird is joining us here for the secretary's notes. Would someone, Mr. Lima, are you still having trouble with your audio? Yeah, you might have to leave and rejoin. This will be most important when it comes to obviously discussing the proposals. So yeah, if you could go ahead and do that. In the meantime, in case you can't get that fixed, would someone like to be our resident timekeeper? You would be usurping Mr. Lima's role unless he really, really wants it back. All right, the vice chair stepping up. All right, we'll do that. We don't need it. I mean, shouldn't be too bad all the way around. I suspect that just once we get to the major stuff, it'll be an issue. But okay, so Mr. Lima left at 6:39. Hopefully he'll be, well, actually we shouldn't even have to record it. He's popping back in and hopefully his audio is working. Moment of truth. Mr. Lima, how's your audio? Oh man, it is. All right, it is not his day. Well, we'll see when that comes to, in the meantime, vote in the chat, but you will have to get this sorted out before the proposals are addressed. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes. So I did send both copies out. It's for the April 19th Executive Committee meeting minutes that you were all on, or most of you were on. And then the May 18th, 2023 OPSCOM meeting that took place, I believe, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, May 18th. I'd like to do these as a slate, assuming that there's no objection to that. So is everyone okay with the minutes? Everyone got a chance to read them over, no corrections or edits? Cool. If that's the case, I will move to approve the meeting minutes as a slate. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ham again. At-larges don't want in on this today. Wow. All right. So we'll move to discussion. Is there any discussion? Ms. Hallisey is air napping. I like it. We'll do it this way again. Is there any objection to adopting or approving the meeting minutes as a slate? Mr. Lima, is that you?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'm talking through my webcam now, not my headphones. I'm so sorry.
Okay, now you're too loud. We need to find this. We need to bridge this.
Okay, hold on.
You just whisper, just use that mic and whisper.
Well, yeah, that's right. No, it's fine. You just need to turn down a little bit, but that's fine. And then now he's got it again. Anyway, so I didn't hear any objections, but I'll ask again. Is there any objection to approving the meeting minutes as a slate? Hearing none, the meeting minutes for the executive committee meeting and the operations committee are approved. So now on to the next item on the agenda, which is the ratification of the operations committee vote and the reason that the meeting was called. So everyone saw the email, I suspect, that was sent out by Ms. Eiler. I forwarded it out. Our former LNC representative, Region 4 representative. The reason that it had to be done per the secretary's notes and the reasoning for it was that we can't be without an LNC rep, especially during this crucial time and while votes are happening and things are taking place. So the operations committee met at the last minute to address this, and they appointed me as the new LNC rep in the interim to finish out her term. Again, elections will be in 2024 at that convention. So it looks like Mr. Butts would like to make a statement, but I guess we'll go into discussion in just a moment. But what I will go ahead and do is just so that everyone understands why we're doing this. So per the operating procedures manual, the OPM, any action taken in this respect by the OPSCOM has to be ratified by the executive committee at their next meeting. And since this is our next meeting, since that took place, it has to be ratified here. It has to pass with a majority. But so what I'll do here is, I think it would be poor form for me to make this motion to ratify the operations committee vote. So I will allow someone, or now would be the time to make a motion to ratify the operations committee.
I motion to ratify the operations committee.
Okay, so Mr. Lima has motioned to ratify the operations committee vote on the LNC Region 4 representative replacement. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that a good
Seconded by
volume?
Mr. Strachan. Yeah, it is. It's perfect.
Okay, I'm whispering.
So I heard Mr. Strachan first, so seconded by Mr. Strachan. Now we will enter discussion. Mr. Butts.
I hope you don't hear the car passing by me. It needs to be made clear that Carrie, she's still working on all the national
Miss
committees
Eiler.
Miss Eiler has been working on all the committees, national committees that she's still working on. Adrian as Region 4
The chair.
rep, chair. Sorry, Mr. Malagon, in his role for LNC rep for he's gonna be doing the official stuff and whatnot, checking the email, and while Carrie's kind of still doing a lot of the legwork for the position. Miss Eiler, I'm sorry. I just want to make I just want everyone to, how do I put this simply? It's not fair for Adrian to have to have his
Mr. Malagon.
Mr. Malagon has his livelihood job, his everyday job, and then 3 full-time volunteer positions now: state chair, MEC state chair, and LNC4 region rep. Those are the 3. That should be 3 different people, not 1 person. And it's okay.
I'm also chair of my county.
Yeah. So
don't shortchange me, Mr. Butts.
So we've got, come the 2024 convention, we have to decentralize Adrian's roles. Mr. Malagon's roles. I'll get the formal stuff down eventually.
You've been on the executive committee for quite some time, Mr. Butts. Surely this shouldn't be very difficult for you. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
So come the 2024 convention, I expect there to be people stepping up for the LNC rep. I expect, someone for Adrian to pass the reins on to in the Mises caucus.
Mr. Malagon.
Mr. Malagon. I can't get that right. I'm sorry. But you get what I'm saying. Yeah, everybody gets what I'm saying, right?
I think people get the spirit of that. I will just add really quickly to this that this is a tall order. So this had to be done at the last minute, and there really isn't anybody that's able to step in like this at the last minute. We could argue whether or not it's fair that I have to take on these positions, but I have committed to doing what needs to be done. And this was an extraordinary circumstance. Now, it is not typical for someone outside of the executive committee to discuss on a motion that's pending, but I would, assuming that there's no objection, Ms. Eiler has her hand up, and I would love to hear from her since she is my predecessor. Is there any objection to hearing from Ms. Eiler? Hearing none, Ms. Eiler.
Thank you. Is it Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I just want to do it official.
Hey, look, she did it on her first try, Mr. Butts. Look at that.
I'm trying. I just didn't want to get the beat down. Okay.
Fair enough.
What I want to say, though, is that this was a strategic choice. This wasn't, oh, I'm quitting and let's just throw whoever can do it in there. We asked for Adrian to do this because that's what was needed based on what only I know and other LNC members know is going on behind the scenes at the LNC. This was a strategic choice. Adrian is the perfect person to put in there based on what's going on right now. This is very much to help our chair, who came from our state, and to give her the support she needs to implement her strategy. So I just felt that was really important for this time, not forever, but for this time. I would even love to go back. I hope we work out this whole entire mess. I hope that Adrian fixes it all because I know he can. So don't worry. I'm going to keep as much of the pressure off of Adrian as possible because I know he has a lot of other work to do.
Well, I definitely appreciate the vote of confidence, and thank you so much for that. Your very, very kind words. And I will just add that for those of you that kind of understand what's going on, that's following, any of you following the public list on the for LP business, you've seen some of the statements that I've made as chair and on behalf of the party, because we are our own region. You know, we have a little bit more autonomy that way, which is really important which is why it's really important for us to keep our region, so that we don't have to collaborate with other states and we can do what we need to do in support of the LNC or particular members, as she said, the chair, Angela McArdle, who is California's favorite daughter as far as we're concerned here. So is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. Let's keep this kosher and we'll do a roll call vote. So when the secretary is ready.
All right. We'll begin with Mr. Alvstad.
Aye.
I will vote yes. Mr. Regier,
Yes.
Mr. Butts,
Aye.
Ms. Stump,
Yes.
Mr. Ham,
Aye.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Hallisey,
Yes.
Ms. Lepachek,
Yes.
Mr. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. Minneletti, Mr. Minneletti. Can you hear me? I'm not getting any audio from you.
There you are. We hear you now.
You can hear me now. Something's going on with my headphones, I guess. I vote no.
Mr. Nichols,
Aye.
Mr. Strachan,
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 13 to 1 to 0 to 0.
I will vote aye since I accepted this nomination and appointment.
The motion passes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion on the webmaster and LPCA website. So for those of you that aren't aware, I believe it was Wednesday, maybe Thursday, our webmaster, Maria, she resigned. And she sent me a personal email. It had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that she's taken on a lot of personal stuff and she has, business stuff going on. So this just isn't viable for her anymore. So she had a meeting with me and Ms. Seiler, the vice chair, Dr. McElroy, just to kind of see I'm not the most technologically savvy person, just to kind of find out and kind of offboard her, so to speak, and try to get an idea of what it is that she does and how we can have certain people fill in those roles, or if it takes multiple people, if it takes one, all of that sort of stuff. So since that went pretty smoothly, as of yesterday, not yesterday, I guess I haven't done it yet. I was going to do that earlier today, but other things took precedent. So tomorrow or later this evening, the credentials for the webmaster will be transferred. It will be a joint, after that kind of strategy offboarding session with her. I thought it would be best, and most of the people on that call agreed, if not all, that Ms. Carrie Eiler and Mr. Theodore Gherkin will be tag teaming the role of webmaster in the interim. which will save the party a lot of money from the CSC side, not from the general fund, but allow us to have a little bit more control over how we rework the website so it's not business as usual. So they've both graciously agreed to do that. They'll be getting their credentials tomorrow. So if anybody emails Webmaster past tomorrow afternoon, you will not be emailing Marie anymore. You would be emailing, it'll be a shared email between the two of them. And I would encourage people on this executive committee to, if you have ideas about specific things that you'd like to see on the website or ways in which it could change, and I'm not necessarily talking about design or color scheme or whatever, but maybe verbiage, if you have a different style that you'd like to see on the website, something like that, that would be great. We do need, some of the language is antiquated and kind of boomerish, if I'm to be super honest about it. So this is a good thing that we'll be able to change. And Ms. Eiler and Mr. Gherkin are more than capable of editing things and doing the stuff that needs to be done on our website until, as we've discussed in the past, we move forward with what we're going to do in the future with this website. But obviously we have to have something working in the meantime. So we will be doing that. We'll fixing it up as it is now until we figure out what the next move is going to be. And we do have a couple of new members that have come into the party within the last couple of weeks that are skilled in web design and have other professional acumen that kind of surround that sphere. So I would be hoping, and one of them applied for Whitcom just I think this morning or yesterday. So he will be a great addition to that. So they will be collaborating with with Whitcom to see what the direction of the website will be. Of course, as executive committee members, you're welcome to attend any LPCA committee meeting that you wish, and I would encourage you to do so specifically if you have particular input that you'd like to give regarding the website. So that's all I'll say on that. It was just a matter of informing you all as to what's happening. It doesn't require a formal motion. We're not appointing a paid position or anything. So I just wanted to let you know that that took place a couple days ago. Anything that any discussion on this item, any further discussion on this item? Cool. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the operations manual changes. So I submitted 2 on the agenda. I will be changing the language on 1, and I do have that ready, but I guess before the motions are made, I'll ask, actually, before we get into a formal motion and into discussion formally, just so we don't have to deal with amendments and all that, will make the secretary's life significantly easier. I will say that for, I believe it's motion 1. So the language that I submitted was that I would like to propose be added to the operating procedures manual is refunds, membership dues for any tier are non-refundable. The suggestion that was given to me by the secretary, which I would like to adopt in its stead, would be membership dues for any tier are non-refundable, except to the extent required to comply with the LPCA bylaws. So it's just making sure that we are still within our bylaws, and I'm glad that he caught that, and we're going to add that. So I would be adding that to the motion once it's made. But before we get into any sort of formal discussion about any of that, does anyone have any issues or any sort of problems or questions surrounding either of these proposals?
Mr. Chair,
Cool.
I could just explain the addition. Because
sure, please.
It's because under the bylaws, if someone signs up for a membership or a renewal that would cause the length of their membership to extend 2 years beyond the date of their membership or the renewal, then that's not permitted under the bylaws. So it would, the purpose of this is just to make sure that we can provide a refund to anyone, or we can give them the option to make their payment a donation to the party in the event that their payment would make them a member beyond the allowable limit.
Correct, and this is very rare. This happens once in a blue moon. Usually it's something that people intend and they mean to do it as a donation. And yes, to answer Mr. Lima's question, the vice chair is the timekeeper. You were gone for too long. Those 30 seconds were costly for you. So yeah, and I guess during the discussion, the formal discussion portion, I will actually go ahead and explain why we're doing these motions in case anyone has any additional questions or follow-ups. But I guess we'll do these one at a time. So I will go ahead and move to add, I will move to adopt the following language to the operating procedures manual under membership on page 17. Membership dues for any tier are non-refundable except to the extent required to comply with the LPCA bylaws. Is there a second?
Second.
No, I was first.
So the second goes to Mr. Lima. I did hear him first. His audio is now working for better or for worse. Really quickly, before I move into discussion on this motion, I just want to inform the secretary that Mr. Shane Kiss, Chair of San Bernardino County, has joined us as a guest. And whoever's on iPhone, would you identify yourself for the meeting minutes, please, either in chat or now by unmuting? Or I guess silence is also good too.
It's the rich type of vision of it, but he agreed that it was completely wrong to be saddling future generations with debt. But that's what they should be doing.
Who's the iPhone? We're hearing a podcast, but not the person speaking.
I hope it's Mr. Jimenez.
It could be. I guess we'll find out soon. So at some point in time, if the iPhone could put in the chat or let us know who they are so that we can record it appropriately. If it's one of the alternates, that'd be great to know. If it's a guest, just to record it for the minutes. Anyway, we'll go ahead and move forward with the discussion on this motion. So the reason that I did this, just to be clear to everybody, and the officers already know, office got an email a few weeks ago from a lifetime member that purchased a lifetime membership in 2019. And they decided that they no longer wanted the lifetime membership and that they wanted their money back. And fortunately, I'm not going to say who the member was, but fortunately, when I explained that we don't give refunds, there are a slew of reasons that we don't, but I do primarily believe that for something like that, once it's given and a certain amount of time has elapsed, it does become a regulatory issue. So we just can't refund that money. So I just want to make it, and that member suggested that perhaps we add this to the OPM or to the bylaws to solidify this, so we had something to point at. And I said, I agree. So we should just make that clear in case anyone. This has never happened, as far as I understand, but I just thought it was funny that a lifetime member, after 3 or 4 years, decided that they wanted a full refund. So just thought that it would be better to codify it. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Mr. Chair, there's a chat.
Oh, actually, and the iPhone is Dr. Yuskavich from Fresno County. So Mary Beth Yuskavich. She just messaged me right now. And Mr. Minoletti.
Yeah, can you?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I can now. If you'd like to speak now, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I put it in the chat because I was having the issues before. I just didn't know if, in addition to adding that language around the bylaws, if there's anything around state law and issuing refunds, if that should be considered. Obviously, I don't think 4 years later falls within any of that scope anyway, but maybe the secretary could advise on that.
If the secretary has any insight, he's more than welcome to provide it.
I'm not an elections law expert, so I would need to research the issue of whether or not that would pose some sort of a regulatory issue. I mean, it probably goes without saying that we're going to attempt to comply with the applicable laws and regulations, but I don't see any harm in putting that in.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And we're not rendering goods or services here. So this is, you pay X amount to become a dues paying member and get certain privileges as a dues paying member. So this isn't something where we're rendering services and then after the fact doing it. I do believe, depending on which fund it goes to, yeah, Mr. Alvarez, why don't you know these things already too? Come on. But I don't see an issue with adding this either. I just think it should just be codified so we have something and this could just be a general policy, but this is not something that happens very often, but it would be just to have something nice to point to, in my opinion. Is there any other discussion on this motion?
I guess since I've already been called out, yes, private parties can't contract to violate state law. It doesn't do anything to put it in there, but I guess it also doesn't do any harm either.
There we go. Congratulations, by the way, for just graduating. Now we see why. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Lima, for that. So is there, just to make this easier, would there be any objection to adopting this? Well, let's do this way. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Would there be any objection to adopting the motion as I amended when I read it per the secretary's direction? Hearing none, the motion to amend the OPM for this particular motion is adopted. We'll move on to the second motion. And so this motion, I will go ahead and move to adopt the following language: the operating procedures manual under treasurer on page 9, transfer limits. The treasurer shall not transfer more than $2,500 from the general fund to any CSC account during the fiscal year without approval from 2/3 of the executive committee, not including donations made to the general fund intended to be donations made to the CSC. So just to be, and I guess the motion has been made. Is there a second for this motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ham. I heard him first, and now we'll go into discussion. Just to give a little bit of clarity here, the CSC treasurer, Mr. Graham Brown, already understands why this is being done, but we've discovered that in the past, there was a general practice, for better or for worse, of moving money. So we have 3 accounts, just so that everyone remembers. We have the general fund, which is what pays the bills for the party for the most part on one side. And then we have the CSC, which is Candidate Support Committee. That one is a state, so FPPC regulatory account. The other one is FEC, and that's a federal account that we operate out of as well. And that's to help fund candidates and do other stuff on the candidate support side. Apparently, it was a common practice to transfer money that was donated to the general fund over to one of the CSC accounts, primarily the state one. Sometimes there were reasons to do it, sometimes not. There was never anything codified that allowed some sort of transfer limit as to why this was done. So just based off of that, I thought it would be good to have a cap at $2,500. And not to suggest that the treasurer is going to be doing this under any circumstance or that anybody would be doing this moving forward. But of course, people's money, as I said at convention when I was vice chair, and I was referring to the whole convention situation or revolving the gala, anyone's money should be able to go where they want it to go. So that's why the provision is at the end that it wouldn't include donations made to the general fund that were intended to be donations to the CSC. So if someone just doesn't know which link to click and they say, oh, I meant to give $1,000 to the CSC, not the general fund, then all we would have to do is move it because it was always intended to go there. But I'm just talking about general funds out of the funds that we have now, unless it shouldn't exceed $2,500. We may fall short paying bills on one end of on one of the bank accounts. So we want to be able to transfer at least a little bit of money if we have to. Again, there's no reason that should happen, but it could happen. And we want to make sure that people's donations aren't being used for something that they don't want it to be used for. So if they intended to donate to the general fund, it should stay in the general fund. If they made a mistake and they want it to go to the CSC, it should go there. And you can move money from the general account to the CSC account without too much of a hassle. So that's the reasoning behind this. It's never been written down. It was just some sort of tradition that was never codified anywhere and that we couldn't find. So that's the purpose for this motion. Is there any further discussion on this motion now that I've given a full explanation? Mr. Strachan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, by the way, I did exactly what you described. I think I clicked the wrong link once and gave money to the general fund that I intended to give to candidate support, and it was, in fact, moved over. If money is designated for the general fund, surely it's designated for any lawful purpose of the party, which might include candidate support. So you could, I guess, this body could decide to transfer money from the general fund to candidate support.
Correct, which is why I put the 2/3 provision, because it would be an extraordinary amount exceeding that, or anything exceeding that would be something that the executive committee decides. It was just something it's also like a regulatory thing. So we want to make sure that we don't theoretically speaking, any money from the general fund could be used for candidates, but to a certain amount and to a certain limit. And this is something that Miss Emily Tilford has talked about on multiple occasions, and even she forgets, despite her vast knowledge on the in the area, in this particular area, she sometimes forgets too. And it's never evergreen. It's always changing. So. But yes, so that's why I wanted to put the provision that should we decide that we wanted to move for whatever reason, $5,000 from the general fund to the CSC, that it would be up to 2/3 of the executive committee to do that. And it wouldn't just be, the treasurer paying his Google Meets account or something, for instance. We know how much those cost. For those of you that don't know, that was a dig at Mr. Regier because he loves Google Meets and I hate it and he refuses to use anything else. But just a joke, of course, he would never do anything untoward. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Is there any objection to this motion being adopted as it was written at the bottom half of the agenda and how it was read? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right. So next item on the agenda, discussion on agility renewal. So those of you that were not on the executive committee last year, I believe it was in July. It was about this time, I guess. It must have been around this time when it happened. So we have a press service called Agility. It was pitched to us by my predecessor as a tool that would be used for all of the things, and we'd be able to get media contacts and really promote the party and do all of this stuff. And at the time, I believe we spent, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was $1,800. I think it was $1,800. Anyway, we never used it. We used it one time, actually. I'm sorry, correction. So the chair of the CMC, also NAC, Ms. Stump, used it for the promotion of the anti-war rally that was to coincide with the LNC Rage Against the War rally that happened in Fresno. So we used it for a small county for a small event, and that cost us $1,800. We haven't used it since. Now, a question that one might ask is, why don't we use it more? Well, the problem with that's not really a problem, is that we have a lot of people that are very great writers that could write great press releases and write resolutions and submit them and send them out, but we're a little pressed right now at this moment for that kind of ability. Some of our top writers are otherwise disposed at the moment, where they can't take the time to do all of this and then learn how to use agility and that whole bit. So we're coming up on renewal. I was emailed. It will automatically renew on August 8th, unless they tried to automatically renew us a month ago, actually. And I told them, can't do that. You have to wait until we have this discussion, because this is an expenditure of $2,700. So personally, I don't see the need to have it. Once we get into discussion, I'll let the chair of the CMC, also our NAC, talk about it a little bit, and perhaps some other options that we could use. So actually, there is no motion on the table right now. It wouldn't be a motion one way or another, I guess. So we could move to not renew it or move to renew it. So I guess that's just, so before I guess we do that, we'll just keep it as a discussion until we arrive at some sort of motion or conclusion. So before, I guess, Ms. Stump, would you like to speak on this? I know that you were researching alternatives and what we used in the past and something that might be a little bit more cost effective.
Yes, when I joined the communications committee in 2019, I had researched press release options, and one of the things we found was EIN news service, and when they send it out to Associated Press. So that's the big, as long as it gets to AP, it gets to everybody, because AP is now the sort of the gorilla of news dissemination. But with there's a couple others. There's Newswire, there's Business Wire. Those are the 900-pound gorillas. But in the end, it is EIN serves the same function as the 900-pound gorillas at a much more cost-effective. measure. Now, what Mimi contracted was what they call hang on, let me get that. What they call the pro rate. And it was 10 press releases plus a 2 bonus. So it was technically 12 press releases over a calendar year, and you paid $400, and you could have up to 12 press releases go out, you know, over the news wire to AP and all the news organizations. And what I thought we were going to use it more, but it turns out I did a research of all the press releases we did on EIN, and there's a few resolutions, there's announcing we're having the convention, and then the rest we have were candidate press releases. Hewitt's having a fundraiser here. Spike is having a bus rally in Oakland here. A majority of them were candidate press releases, since we had all these unused press release opportunities, and to make use of our account. But I would say that we should go back to EIN, and we should go to what I would call the basic, where it's per press release, it's $100. Because we're not even if we were to do resolutions and announcement of the conference, that's at most like what, 3? So that would be $300. The next level is pro, which is $400. And now it's instead of the dozen, now it's 5 + 8. So it's 8 press releases. We don't do 8 press releases a year. So even for $400, we're not making full use of it. So I recommend that we go back to EIN, we go to the basic level, $99 a press release, or actually it's $99.95, $100 a press release. So
they get you the good old sales gimmick.
Yeah. So I just say, and then any candidate press releases, if candidates want to have press releases, they either pay for it out of their campaign, or they ask the candidate support committee to pay for the press release. But I think for the election year for 2024, we may, depending on the strength of the candidate we have and how much campaigning there's going to be in California, then we may want for 1 year to go to the pro. Then it would be cost efficient. But we won't even know who our candidate is until literally a year from now. So I would say go basic, save the money, and then in 2024 reevaluate going up to the pro package.
Yeah, and Ms. Seiler made a really good, before I pass it off to the vice chair and then the treasurer, Ms. Seiler made a really good point in the chat. Again, I just do want to stress that this isn't a lack of want, it's a lack of having people obviously we don't have paid staff here, but just having people that would volunteer their time to write, certain press releases and stuff. If we have them, personally, I'll go with whatever the majority seems to want here. I don't see much of a difference between, and this isn't something that would have to be done now, between the per $100 and the 400 to get 12 if we are going to make use of them over time.
Well,
but
8. It's now 8 for $400. If I could address Ms. Eiler's concern, pay for only what you need. That's the $100 press release. So we only, we drop agility. We don't have an EIN account. When we finally do need when we do finally need to do a press release, then we call up EIN and say, hey, we're an old customer of yours. We want to go the we want to go the $100 route on the basic, and we reinvigorate the account, and then we just do, boom, the one press release. So that is a pay for as you only need it.
And that's something that could be addressed. We wouldn't have to do that on this call. When the time gets closer, we would do that. Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I was at that vote last year. And I seem to remember the immediate past chair made some comment about that we're getting some sort of grandfathered rate, that if we go away from agility and then in the future try to come back, we're going to be paying a lot more. Is my memory correct, or is there anything to that? I'm sort of maybe misstumped.
No, there was something to that. I do remember her saying that, but they bumped it up anyway. They're giving us what they called, and I just copied and pasted the email. It was a 50% legacy discount, which leads me to believe that for new users, what they'll do is they will tack on. So if they're giving us the legacy discount because we've been a customer with them for a year, then what they're saying that it costs new members would be what, $5,400 for unlimited use. But if they're going to continue to increase it, so right now the renewal is $2,700, but for all we know, in a year they're going to say, oh, you get another legacy discount, but now it's $3,500. So now they're charging X amount. And realistically, if we wanted to go back, I mean, this is kind of my arena sales, right? So what they'll do is they'll probably try to counter with some better offer, or they'll do something later. They'll reach out once a month or once every 3 months in some sort of cadence to see with some sort of introductory. They'll give us the offer again at some point in time, I suspect, if we wanted to come back. But really, they need us to stay as a client more than we need to keep them as a client, because we really don't have a reason to as of this time, if that makes sense. But yeah, there was something to that. Mr. Aguirre.
Yeah, my comment was just that, if we have a marketing calendar and we have, PR as a function of that, and we know what our plan is in terms of how many press releases we're going to do, when we're going to do them, then we can evaluate tools that will best meet the needs of that plan. So it sounds to me like we're kind of lacking on the strategic side and trying to decide on a tool without understanding what the strategy and what the inputs in to meet the goal are there. It seems like we got the cart before the horse here. So, my suggestion would be to, I think we put agility on ice until we know what our plan is. And then once we have a plan, we figure out what tool best meets the needs there.
I agree. And I was on the executive committee as well. I believe I was vice chair at the time when this motion came, and we were kind of sold. If it had been put that way, and if I'd known a little bit more at the time, I wouldn't have voted to approve this expenditure. We were kind of told that, I mean, I don't want to say we were sold a lie, but we were kind of sold a lie as to how much this would be used, and over-promised on what it would do. So yes, I agree. We need to have some sort of strategy, and we have time to do it, as Ms. Stump said. I mean, obviously we could have press releases before the election cycle, but we could do other things before then. And if it happens before our July XCOM meeting, that we have a plan, that the CMC has developed a plan, and we have people committed to writing certain things by certain times that we want to release. Obviously, we can't plan for everything, but if there is some sort of strategy, then we can determine if the pay per option is more prudent than the, even if it's $400 for 8 releases, which comes out to half the price, right? So
At this rate,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is resolutions and announcing the convention. That's the only thing that we were using it for that wasn't candidate related. So unless we start doing more resolutions, it just makes more sense to do the onesie at a time at the $100 rate. And I think and for press releases for candidates, I think those candidate campaigns should be paying for their own press releases, or they get the CSC to punt them $100 to get it over the press wires. But I think it should come from the campaigns that they pay for their own press releases. But the only reason we were doing the press releases is because we had all these, we had 12 slots, we had 12 press releases we could use up, and, use them or lose them. So that was the whole, prospect of doing the press releases under the LPCA account.
Cool. So we're at 90 seconds here. So let's do it this way, just so that we have, I will make a motion to renew agility. Okay, as stated, the 2,700 50% legacy discount before October 8th. So an I vote will be for renewing this account. A nay or a no vote will be for not renewing it. And then if this motion does not pass, then I will email Agility tomorrow and let them know that we will not be renewing. I think this is probably the best way to go to do this, so that I can say that a motion was put forward, the executive committee, and I don't have to say that we voted to not renew. You know, that doesn't look as good. So I will go ahead and move to renew Agility at their legacy discounted rate of $2,700 before August 8th. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Minnelletti. Is there any further discussion on that? Well, I guess we'd have to motion to extend time at this point, so we'll just go straight into a vote. And let's go ahead and do this by roll call vote.
All right, I will begin with Mr. Alvstad.
No.
I will vote no. Mr. Regier,
I vote no.
Mr. Butts,
I vote no.
Ms. Stump,
I vote no.
Mr. Ham,
I vote no.
Mr. Alvarez,
No.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Ms. Hallisey,
No.
Ms. Lepacek,
No.
Mr. Lima,
Nay.
Mr. Minnelletti,
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Nichols,
Nay.
Mr. Strachan.
No.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 1 to 13 to 0 to 0.
The chair will vote nay on this motion.
Right, the motion fails.
Darn. Okay. Mr. Lima did ask a really good question. I'll let the treasurer chime in here before we move on to the next agenda item. Refresh my memory, as chair of budget committee, does the CMC have a budget?
Did remind me what CMC, that's the media.
Communications, yeah, communications and media committee.
Only insofar as they would have input on items that were like, we didn't have a specific budget line item for CMC discretionary or anything like that. Only as insofar as budgeted line items would apply to their function.
Okay, so perhaps as a special, we'll have to look at how we would do this in the future to be able to give Ms. Stump the rein to do this. Once we put the horse before the cart, then we'll have to look at a way to ensure that she can go ahead and take care of press releases as needed. I mean, they would have to go through us anyway, so it wouldn't really, but I'll put that as an item for later. Are these points of parliamentary inquiry or points of order for Mr. Butts and Mr. Lima?
I just wanted to speak on that question, but you got it.
Oh, got
my
okay.
thing is my thing is just that do we need to vote on, yeah, so I guess it would be a point of order. Do we need to vote on something for the $100 per press conference or per press release?
So once we get there, we'll probably assign a specific line item budget to the CMC for something like this moving forward once we have a schedule. So we'll do that as an action item toward the end, so that by the next meeting, we kind of have a plan worked out, and then we have a budget so that we don't have to have a meeting or approve every expenditure moving forward. And we just kind of have an idea of how much we plan to approve up to, and then give the CMC a little bit more free rein when they're, when they're communicating with the chair about what would be released at any given time. Cool. Mr. Richard Brown, our parliamentarian, has joined us all the way from Louisiana. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Whoops. There we go. Thank you very much. I'm also in the meeting of the National Bylaws Committee meeting at the same time. So
I'm so sorry. I really thought that Miss Eiler was a glutton for punishment, but you're giving her a run for her money. But I guess we'll go back to our traditional address of Mr. Graham Brown being Mr. Brown the Lesser, and then we have Mr. Brown the Greater here now as well. So fantastic. Great. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the big one, of course. The setting the 2024 LPCA convention location, date, and time. So let's do it this way. What I'd like to do is have discussion around this topic. We do have all of the people who have submitted proposals on this call, Dr. McElroy, Mr. Lima, and the Vice Chair. They can all speak to their motions, and I believe Ms. Eiler helped the Vice Chair with this motion, so she can speak to this as well. What I'd like to do is perhaps, did everyone get a chance to read over the proposals, or would a screen share for each one while they're speaking to it be, would that be easier for everybody? Is there a preference?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to
yes.
make an executive decision. So we'll do that. So
Screen share,
we'll start
please.
we'll start in the order in which we received them. If the secretary wouldn't mind pulling up, I think that my MacBook Air probably can't handle all that. I need a Pro. So okay, so you should be. We'll do it in the order in which they were received. So we'll go ahead, assuming that there's no objection to hearing from Dr. McElroy, since Mr. Gorsh is not here. She can kind of run down her. So we'll do it this way. We'll listen to each proposal. We'll hear the pitch for each one, and then we'll all be able to ask questions to whomever you wish to ask the question to, and then we will let them speak and answer that question, since they are the ones that gave that proposal. Does everyone understand? Cool. So whenever the secretary gets Dr. McElroy's proposal up, I'll let her speak to it.
Okay, and this is the Clovis proposal.
Correct. That's next to Fresno, which is the Paris of the Central Valley. Clovis is just kind of a subsidiary, I guess, or just kind of a.
Okay, does everybody see that?
Yes, and I guess I should have asked Dr. McElroy if she's in a position to speak on her proposal, but I guess now is as good a time as any. Dr. McElroy, are you with us?
I'm here. I'm hustling to get ready. I'm trying to pull it up in front of me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up my proposal.
He is,
Okay.
the secretary is screen sharing it too, just as an FYI.
No, just so I have reference correctly. Okay, so yes, as as the chair has stated, Clovis is an adjacent city to Fresno. So the Fresno airport comes in pretty close to the border between Fresno and Clovis. Old Town Clovis is a cute little shopping district, a few blocks long. It's very safe. I will say the police practices and the city council legislation and those types of things are very different in Clovis and Fresno. So Clovis is generally a safer area, and also was less likely to comply with the lockdowns during the COVID regime. So there is a Veterans Memorial District sort of conference center, meeting center with several meeting rooms of different sizes that is literally across the street from the shopping district. And that's where we looked to see what we could do. So this would be a different type of proposal where we are renting a meeting room from a facility that does not have any hotel or any sort of affiliation with any hotels, any catering, any food. They're open to us bringing any caterer in. If we did want to serve alcohol, we just have to make sure that we are able to, either through the caterer or some other way, acquire the ABC licenses for the day. Excuse me. So we will be renting a room from the Clovis Veterans Memorial District. They have actually 2 rooms available. One would be for a meeting room, and then one would be for our any other a smaller size room for our breakfast, lunch, if we wanted to do the gala dinner there, any other speakers, anything like that. And basically we'd be renting for the entire day. They have a rate for the day plus a little cost for extra time. So if we did, I would say if we did Saturday all the way through the gala dinner, then that would be a larger cost. But if we're just doing breakfast, lunch, and business, then that's sort of their standard daily rate. They have extra charges for setup and cleanup. We do not have to use them for setup and cleanup. I think we can, the convention committee can decide what they want to use volunteers for and what they want to pay the venue for. So that's, actually putting the chairs and tables in the correct place, cleaning up the trash, that type of thing. So I've included what I thought were reasonable setup and cleanup fees in this meeting room cost, as well as the reasonable amount of time that I thought we would be using. There is a map that I attached as a hyperlink to this so that you can, and the price list, so you can look at what our options are. At the time, approximately a month ago, I did confirm that President's Day weekend would be available for these rooms. However, this facility is closed on President's Day itself, so we would not be able to extend into Monday at all. As far as hotels, there are some options within walking distance, but they are smaller hotels and they wouldn't be able to have the entire room block. I didn't spend as much time getting those quotes, but I did put some information in there. Again, this would be maybe up to the convention committee to decide which hotel makes sense. However, there's a brand new construction Courtyard by Marriott about 2 miles away. Any attendees would have to drive or Uber from the hotel to the Veterans Memorial Hall, and that would be free parking on both ends, and there should be plenty of parking to do so. And so I did get room rates for that. The Courtyard by Marriott can also host a Friday night reception. They would not charge us any additional fees beyond the food that we serve, and there would be a cash bar. It's a very lovely facility. We could do it indoor or outdoor depending on the weather. It's unlikely we would want to host the breakfast at the Courtyard by Marriott, although that's an option if we wanted it to be a smaller venue. And also the Marriott can help us with figuring out catering if we wanted to go through them, and maybe even get some of these costs down through the Veterans Memorial Hall. We could also do, for something like the gala dinner, we could go to a restaurant in the area. One option would be in the downtown shopping district. And I spoke to one of the restaurants there. They have party rooms, rent out the party room for a deposit, which then covers the cost of food, and they're going to have a bar in the restaurant that could be a cash bar for our guests. So that's sort of the idea behind this proposal, a little bit different than what we've done in the past. It would be less sort of stringent requirements on the party budget, but a little bit more legwork for the convention committee to put all the pieces together.
Thank you, Dr. McElroy. I'm going to change things up a bit. It'll actually be a little bit easier. If the secretary could periodically just scroll through, I mean, I have it pulled up on my iPad, but just for others that are relying on the screen share, just little by little so that people can kind of see. I'm going to change it up a little bit. We'll do questions after the proposals are presented. So if anyone has something that they'd like to comment on or that they'd like to ask, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. I'll kick it off by just double checking something here. So I have a question. Is this proposal for President's Day weekend? Or is this
yes,
for,
it is.
or this is for President's Day weekend?
Specifically for President's Day weekend. However, they would not guarantee me that date until we actually start the process of reserving it. And then we would have a 72-hour hold on the date. So I have not called to confirm that it's still available. That's something that we would just have to do is once a decision's made.
Okay, and then my second question before I pass it off to Mr. Strachan would be, I'm not seeing any numbers here for sales tax or other service fees that may be included in anything. Were they just not willing to give that to you? I know that sometimes they won't until they have a formal contract that they draw up. Or is it that they don't have any, or what would the reason be? Or do you know of any?
Yeah, I didn't ask that question in particular. Like I said, I attached the price quote for the Veterans Memorial District.
Right.
Hang on, I may have had a note. Maybe I did make the question.
Because I don't believe I saw it on there. I could be wrong. Yeah, they just
Yeah,
seem to
I
give
don't.
flat rates.
They just give flat rates, so I actually can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I don't know if, I guess it would be reasonable for the executive committee to assume sales tax added. I don't think they're going to do that kind of service fee that the hotels do, however.
Okay. Just wanted to double check. That's it for me, Mr.
And I will
Strachan.
say,
Oh,
and
go
that
ahead.
was, and I would say that for the courtyard, like for the Friday night reception, that's in the proposal from the Courtyard by Marriott, and there's nothing in there about, they have all the fees and everything in that proposal. So again, that's you just pay for the food that you serve itself. There's no minimums or anything like that, but there is going to be, of course, sales tax, and I don't think they put, no, I don't see any service fees on there either.
Okay, those always come later. That's how they get you. Okay, that's it for me, Mr. Strachan.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. McElroy, thank you for this. Am I correct that only the Courtyard by Marriott has said they can actually block rooms for the delegates?
The other hotels can block rooms, but they're smaller hotels, so they have about 50 rooms total. So they would not block all 50 rooms for us. They would maybe, I know the Best Western said they might block maybe up to half of them. And we might not even be able to get more after that, because they might already have them, reserved at that point. So if we wanted to get those 50 rooms, 100 room nights, that could not happen at the local hotels.
And you also mentioned that I think on the Thursday, there's anticipated, the Thursday before the weekend, there's anticipated to be a rooms crunch because of a sporting event.
Correct. There will be a sporting event at Fresno State, which is, like I said, it's adjacent city. So that's what the Courtyard told me.
Okay. Yeah, I just wonder, I worry that some of that might spill over into the Friday.
It sounds like it's going to be the previous week.
Oh,
so
previous week,
everybody
okay.
would be leaving town on Friday.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions here? Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I more wanted to make some comments than ask a question. I remember going to my first convention was in Visalia in 21. I probably wouldn't have made it to a convention if it was in the North or the South at the time. Since then, I'm a lot more committed and am willing to travel a lot more, but I'm thinking about more people like me that are looking at getting involved that might be in the local area. I do like the idea of the geographic location of the Central for this time around. I'd also like to point out it's about 10 minutes from the airport, which is very convenient. It's a lot closer than it was to the Visalia convention. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Mr. Butts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There you go. You got it. Look at that.
Yeah, I got
18
it.
times the charm.
I want to make this clear, make sure I got this right. So we're gonna be at 3 different locations: the hotel we stay at, whatever hotel we end up staying at individually, the where the business is going to be at, and then the gala event is going to be at a completely different location, correct?
It's my understanding that it could be up to 3, but I'm sorry, Dr. McElroy, go ahead.
Yeah, the gala could be held at the same place where business is and catered in. That is one option. And then another option is, excuse me.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and then another option would, if we wanted to go offsite, we could go offsite. And literally what I was thinking is that there's offsite options that are at walking distance, like literally a block away from the business venue or across the street from the hotel. So both of those areas have restaurant options that would be available and have space for something like our gala.
The biggest benefit to this proposal, and again, I want to remind everyone, I will not be voting on this item. But I will say that it seems to me that the biggest benefit of this proposal is also its greatest detriment, which is the flexibility. So you could potentially have 3 different locations in which certain things are held. So business, sleeping, gala, or other meals or whatever. And then that's obviously inconvenient, but that's also really great because a lot of hotels, the Embassy Suites was kind of, it's unique for the price, that the food was actually really good. And that's usually always been our #1 problem anywhere we go, is that you get standard hotel food that's really terrible. But what you make up for in that respect is the convenience. So it just seems to me that, again, its biggest benefit is its biggest detriment. Mr. Regier.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. McElroy, for putting this together. Quick question. So I've been trying to put together like an apples to apples comparison of all these different bids to try and like help myself understand just from a cost perspective what the pros and cons of each. But it was this one, is more unconventional relative to the other hotel-based conventions, so it's a little harder for me to figure out like what the cost, where the biggest cost savings would be achieved. But I do really like this idea of moving away from a hotel, or just thinking outside the box with regard to the convention. But so specifically, I just wanted to ask, what do you think would be, what are the big variables where we would save versus doing this at a hotel?
I think the biggest variable is where the food options are. So we're paying for a room rental to host our meals at this event center. Let's say all the meals, and then we're just hiring a caterer. So in that case, you don't have food and beverage minimums. You are paying the caterer for a per head price, which anybody who's sort of thrown a party or used a caterer at a wedding or something like that, that's not affiliated with the hotel, you can just, it's just a per head price, and there's no food and beverage minimums that we're trying to hit. There would be no loss as long as we're above a minimum. And in my experience, those minimums are quite low. So you might just need to sell 10 tickets to hit the minimum or something like that.
Right. Beyond the gala, is there any other food that we are obligated or should provide the delegates?
Is that a question for
I guess it's general. Yeah. It applies to everything. That was a general question, I guess.
I don't know. That's not I don't think that's a question for me.
Could you ask the question again?
Yeah, so I guess my question is this, right? Like, so the food is a huge component of all these bids, right? We obviously, if we're selling tickets to a gala, we're obligated to provide food for that event, right? Beyond that, is there any other food that we're obligated to provide, or that we would want to provide as like a standard, I don't know, coffee or things like that? Like, so that's what, you know what I'm asking? I'm trying. So in terms of like comparing all these things, it's like, what food are we planning to buy, or do we have to buy? Because some of these have minimums and others are like a la carte. So.
Correct. Obligated is different than what we should or have traditionally done. We're technically not obligated to provide any sort of meals, right? The gala,
if we sell gala tickets, we probably should, right? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on whether I like the person or not. I'm just kidding. No. So yeah, we definitely should. We should do the gala. I think that's our biggest fundraiser. Whether however people allocate their money is their business moving forward. But as far as breakfast and lunch are concerned, whether we're obligated to is so just based on the numbers for last year's convention. It was just under or just over half, depending on the lunch or the breakfast options of the people that attended business. So I think at the height of business, it was 134. And I think for the highest breakfast attendance. I think we were looking at, on paper, I believe it was supposed to be 74, but even then, I don't think we ever hit that threshold. I think people bought tickets, but not everyone went. And the same thing for lunch. So we probably provided lunch for about half of the delegates that were at convention in Sacramento. So, and I'm not sure that that's something that's necessary moving forward. If it makes sense and we can make money off of that, then sure. But we can also have speakers. And then this is where the flexibility comes in, which is, again, one of the biggest benefits to this proposal, which is that if we just wanted a room for a speaker to speak during breakfast or during lunch, people could bring their own food in. They could go have a 20-minute whatever, go get their own food at whatever affordability suits them, and then come in and listen to the speaker at whatever room, assuming that food is able to be brought in, which it seems like it would be. So I don't know if that answers your question or that.
Yeah,
raises
gotcha.
more
No, that
questions.
helps. So I guess specific to this proposal, my question would be, what food are you suggesting that the party should provide?
I'll let Dr. McElroy answer that.
Right, so I would say that I would only say provide food for whatever tickets we're specifically advertising we're selling food for.
Okay.
It can be breakfast, lunch, and gala as usual, and also the Friday night reception. I think it makes sense for the Friday night reception if we do like sort of if you buy a package or pay $10 for the reception type of thing like we did last time, having it at the Marriott, it should be a nice event there. And we don't have the food and beverage minimum. So again, we just do it per head. I did want to also add that one of the benefits to this is, as the chair implied, people could go get their own food. For those delegates who don't buy a meal, there are many options for going to get their food elsewhere, and including several coffee shops. So there won't be like one Starbucks bar that everybody's trying to get their Starbucks at or their coffee at in the morning. There's one in the hotel, but then there's also I think 4 or 5 coffee shops within walking distance in Clovis, several restaurants, some are fast food, some are nicer restaurants. So a lot of options for delegates to go get their own food if they're not buying a meal.
Let's refrain from using corporate names here. Starbucks isn't giving us any sort of money during this meeting. So we might do business with the Marriott and stuff, so that's fine. But let's just say coffee. They're not giving us any money.
It is literally Starbucks in the Marriott. But yes, the coffee shops, I don't think there's a I don't think there is a Starbucks in Clovis in that downtown district. I think they are all independent.
This might sound, actually, I do remember what my last question was going to be because I'm looking at the chat and I'm not being facetious. Mimosas will be a staple of conventions moving forward, at least an option. So how would this play out as far as this bid is concerned?
Yes, so there is a mimosa bar on the Courtyard Marriott menu, and they are able and willing to cater for us at the Veterans Hall. And they also said that they would help us, they would find out if they can use their license so that we don't have to get a separate license, or at least find out how we can manage that.
As long as the chair has bottle service, that's fine.
So it's on the menu. I have it open. It's $8 a person for an hour for a mimosa station.
An hour? Oof. All right. Oh, I do remember seeing that now. I forgot to open that. Oh no, it's right here. Yeah. Okay. I refamiliarized myself with this proposal because I looked at it when you sent it a few weeks ago. Okay. Are there any other questions for Dr. McElroy, Chair of Fresno County? Okay. Thank you, Dr. McElroy. We'll go ahead and move on to the next bid that we received. The next proposal was brought to us by the Vice Chair, Mr. Alvstead, and I believe he had assistance from Ms. Eiler. So if she would like to, well, I'll let the Vice Chair kick it off and present that report, and Ms. Eiler, assuming that there's no objection, having her supplement that proposal as needed.
All right, I'll try to, we've got 6 minutes left, so I'll try to make
let's
this
do,
brief.
actually, let's do this then. This will take time, and this is really important to make sure that people actually get Ms. Seiler doesn't, wow, how bad is the proposal going to be? She wants nothing to do with it. I'll go ahead and move to extend time by 20 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lima. Are there any objections to extending time? Hearing none, time is extended by 20 minutes. Mr. Alfstead, you have the floor.
Yeah, so this bid basically, the big selling point for this bid is Orange County. Because it's going to be a presidential year, we need to have this at a place that has access to a legit airport. This hotel is very close to Orange County Airport, which of course is an international airport. So people coming from out of state, can get there on flying nonstops and aren't going to have to transfer.
Well, let's try to
But
not
then
throw
outdoor-
shots at other proposals. I'll just say that Fresno is considered to be a legitimate airport. Some people may not think so, but that it is technically an international airport. I will just say that. Anyway, please continue.
Okay. Well, okay. I was going to say something about San Francisco next, but I guess I won't.
Let's not mess with your proposal then. No, go ahead by all means.
Yeah, there's very little excrement on the ground in Orange County. Let's just leave it at that.
Can you all see the proposal up on the screen right now, by the way?
Oh, we can, yeah. And if you wouldn't mind
Okay,
just scrolling down little by little.
Sure, I will, yeah.
Yeah. So if you could just scroll down, DoubleTree in Santa Ana. This will be a very conventional convention. So assuming 250 attendees, we'd have a $20,000 food and drink minimum and $159 a night room fee. We have a minimum of 100 room nights. If we need to do a smaller convention, they can pivot and get us down into some smaller offices for 150 people and drop the food and drink minimum to 15,000. Yeah, so there's our rate. We would have to pay for parking at this hotel, and it's $17 per night overnight, $5 per day parking. Yeah, and then if you could just stop when you get to this full table here. So yeah, it's just as a standard convention reception. Again, on most of our, but very importantly, we have room for exhibits and 5,000 square feet for the general session. Additional rooms for VIP lunches and dinners. I think that's about it. Yeah, if you could continue scrolling down. Yeah, the hotel itself is very nice and he said very, very conveniently located with a free shuttle from the airport. I think that's it.
Actually, so I do have some questions for the vice chair. Really quickly, I would like to go back to Dr. McElroy, assuming she's still available. Something just occurred to me that I had written down before, but I forgot to address.
Yes, I'm here.
So the AV, so assuming that the gala is in a different location than business, how would you envision the AV situation? Because we would have to have either a setup, we'd have to have the main setup in business, and then for the gala, we would either have to move some stuff or we would have to have duplicates of something. How did you envision that working out?
Yeah, and that would also have to happen if we had our speakers in a different room, or lunch and breakfast speakers in a different room. I think that happened at the DoubleTree, that the AV moved up to the terrace and back down to the business room. That's
correct, but I mean,
level.
different locations are significantly different than changing rooms.
Yeah, that would have to happen. There would have to be a moving the AV or a duplicate of AV.
Okay.
Depending, I think usually there is about 2 hours between the end of business and the gala.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted that just occurred to me right now, just going through the vice chair's proposal. So I have two questions for this one before I open it up to others. It would be, were you able to get a service fee from the Marriott at all as to what they would charge additionally to the tax?
We didn't, we just got the tax rate. But there was no mention of the service fee.
Yeah, they never do. They never do until
Yeah.
you're ready to sign on the dotted line. The second question I have is, what would happen if we split the difference? So you gave proposals, if the secretary could scroll up to the near the top. A little bit more down. Here we go, perfect. So you gave basic costs assuming 250 and 150. I think that a fair estimate would probably be about 200. We had, I think, a max of 132 in Sacramento, and given that it's a presidential year, we could probably expect an influx of 25-ish%, maybe a little bit more. What would happen if we split the difference? Which fee would we get stuck paying, or is there a middle ground or wiggle room or negotiating, or did they just give these two numbers and it's going to be either or?
Yeah, these are the two, unless Ms. Eiler wants to speak to it, so if he doesn't seem to want to be associated with it.
No,
She
it's
wants
fine.
nothing to do with this proposal.
No,
Oh, never
I'm
mind.
joking. I dealt with the wonderful gentleman. I spoke to him while Gary was busy. And yeah, he just gave us the best rate he could for food and drink, which is what they really care about. We just have to meet that minimum. And when I broke it down, it seemed like what we're probably spending anyway. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I'm guessing-
I will remind everyone that what we spent, the food and beverage minimum at the Embassy Suites was $14,000 this past year in 2023. And we ended up hitting $1,725, and I believe that was before fees and taxes, because they don't include fees and taxes as part of the food and beverage minimum. They tack that on at the end. So given that this is a presidential year, if we count, and that didn't actually count the open bar because we surpassed it anyway, given the people that ended up buying at, of course, the last minute, and the mimosa station helps. Not to pat myself on the back there, but, or Miss Christopher rather. But it did help. So I suspect that with an open bar arrangement, as most of these hotels and venues seem to have, with an influx of 30 to 40 more people, hitting 20,000 shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, those were the numbers from last year.
I guess I also wanted to say that because this is such a desirable location, it's a holiday weekend, Disneyland is nearby. I don't know how many people.
Oh, that was
if
my
you're
second
already-
question, actually. This proposal, just to be clear, is for President's Day weekend?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. Gary started
Yes.
the process and told him the dates, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
All
it's
right.
on the chart with the room, with the event
Oh yeah,
spaces.
I think you're
Has
right.
the
I
days
think
on it.
the dates
Oh,
are
it
on
is. I'm
there.
sorry. I didn't realize that the dates were on there. That's my fault. Okay. Fantastic. And anybody else have any questions for either Mr. Alvstead or Miss Eiler? Mr. Butts.
So this is a fairly expensive proposal. So me as a delegate going to the convention, 160 plus taxes a night, so about 4 nights, looking at $300 or $400. It looks about a little less than $20 a night for parking. 3 or 4 nights, what's that, almost another $100. So the average delegate is looking at spending about $400 to $500 out of pocket. If my math is correct, if my quick math is correct, is close. But you all don't seem to being that the drink minimum of the last year's was 14 and change, and we surpassed that. You don't I'm worried about what our profit's going to be, because I don't want to break even. I really would like to have come out looking really nice afterwards, to be able to invest in the party, to have a nest, we get a viable candidate going or something like that, somewhere, and then we can, we can, spend some resources down that guy's way or something. I want to be able, I want to be able to, I don't want to just have like a fancy get together and then come out broke afterwards. You know what I mean?
I'll remind Mr. Butts, conventions are supposed to be a net zero, as the immediate former chair once said. So that shouldn't be a problem. Well, one said several times. No, but joking aside, so there are a couple of things here, and I do want to stress this to everybody. It's very possible that I got very fortunate, and this is why it all came together, and it was very frustrating when I was doing this last year, when we had to have those meetings and there was such pushback from executive committee members that didn't fully understand the scope of the situation and what we were dealing with. So it's possible that because it happened so late and that we were calling hotels to see who could accommodate the switch at the last minute, they had, if memory serves, they had a cancellation for President's Day weekend, and they were just as anxious to fill that spot with something as we were to fill that, to keep that same weekend per bylaws and the whole bit, right? So it's very possible that when you're talking about bids this far out, that they're going to be a little bit less gracious because they assume that between now and 7 or 8 months from now, they're going to fill it with something. The other thing that I'll say is that the bulk of the cost, so just to remind everybody, when we're talking about food and drink minimum, that's what the hotel gets as revenue that's spent. I guess you could say by the party, but it would be by the members that are purchasing tickets. It's only by the party if things happen as they had been done in the past until last year, where we overcommit and underdeliver. For instance, as I said in the report, if you are committed to buying 150 lunch plates and you've already bought them and it doesn't matter, now you just have to sell the tickets, I think that that's very poor form. This is why I did the very hard cutoff for, we need to have X amount of people buy tickets and commit by this date, because I need to tell the hotel what we're doing. We're not going to overpay for food. That's where we've made mistakes in the past. It's overpaying for stuff that people haven't purchased, and then we're stuck footing the bill. So the other thing too is that as far as the cost for the individual member, Dr. McElroy pointed this out per the list that I sent out, and kind of what the general prerequisite for a convention should be, at least in my opinion, is that I'm not really concerned with the cost to the delegates as much as I am to the party. For a lot of people, this has just become, as you said, a pomp and circumstance thing where people want to go and if you want to go and vote on party business and you want to be engaged, nothing is stopping you from doing that. You don't have to go to this hotel. You can find friends to share, a room with. You can do whatever. If you want to pay for the extravagances, that's kind of on you. No one is saying that you have to pay $59 for a hotel room or whatever. And what you spend is on you. Although I would agree that the less that you spend throughout the weekend on other things that are inconsequential would lead you to likely spend more money at the gala. But what people are paying for is the experience, and it has to match. Most people are willing to pay for but they expect an experience that correlates with the amount that they've spent, if that makes sense. So I'm not really sure that this is the same proposal as what's been done in the past. I'd give some pushback on that. I think that this is different. I do think that these things are doable, but it's really gonna come down to the experience that we can provide the membership. And then just two other really quick things before I pass it on to the treasurer. It's that the bulk of our money, if you guys saw the P&L and the broken down P&L within the report, is what we spent on the speakers and their particular accommodation. So that's where the bulk, we had a lot of speakers, and then obviously it was $229 a night, plus paying for their meals, and some of that could have been trimmed down, also getting speakers to fly in from a little bit closer instead of from the East Coast. So all things that I put in the report, that's where the bulk of the money comes from. And then the other thing that I was going to say was, I forgot. It may come to me later, but Mr. Regier.
Yeah, so to Mr. Butts' point, I guess the thing I'm kind of struggling with, I literally took all these proposals and tried to put them in a spreadsheet and try and make them apples to apples, but really we're only looking at the expense side of the equation and not the revenue side of the equation. So, right. One thing, I don't know if to what extent that has been thought through, or that we are just going to attempt to sell packages to cover expenses. But, you know, there's obviously like pretty big cost disparities, specifically, you know, and not jumping forward, but that SF Hilton proposal has no food and bev minimums, you know, so potentially how we handle the revenue side of it is just as important as how we handle the expense side of it. So I'll just throw that out there, and maybe as we circle back, since we're halfway through these or part of the way through these, we could, you know, we could just be prepared to speak to that at the end. How we look to the revenue side of this and what we think that'll look like, because yeah, if we're looking at this just to break even and we think we can break even on any of these proposals, then maybe they're all the same, you know, from a financial standpoint. But if they have different, I don't know, if you're like, no, people want to come here and they want to donate money, and we can lower our food minimums or food and bev minimums or whatever, and people are going to spend the same amount of money, then maybe this thing is accretive from a profitability standpoint. So that's what I'm struggling with and just trying to understand with these.
No,
proposals.
correct. That's a great point. It reminded me of what I was going to bring up. So of course, the revenue aspect is very important. And I made mention of that in the report. That's something that we haven't focused a lot of our efforts on. How we accumulate that revenue is going to be, I mean, traditionally it's only been the gala, but perhaps we can try to make money some other way, selling stuff right there on site, finding fun ways to get the speakers engaged for people to donate money. I tried to do that with the escape room that was done by the LNC chair, and unfortunately some of the materials didn't come in at the last minute and wasn't able to be set up. And we try to do different things to that effect to increase the revenue, and it was somewhat successful. But this being a presidential year shouldn't just be you know, a 4-digit profit. So we made just under $7,000 this last time around. But this one being a presidential year should actually be a 5-digit revenue increase, because if we invite presidential candidates who have at this point announced, now not all of them do, as Ms. Stump pointed out earlier during the agility conversation, they might not announce until about this time, which would be after convention, but presumably they would want to announce before this convention if they're going to start pitching their, you know, if they're going to start giving their pitch to respective delegations. Per FEC regulations, we cannot pay them anything. They actually have to pay us. So we can actually charge them to speak if they want to speak to the largest delegation in the country. That could be a way of making money. Also, sponsorships. These conventions can really only happen the way that we actually make money outside of other fringe things. And I'm open to fundraising ideas, and we have a lot of ability to do X, Y, or Z. We need to make sure that we understand that you know, we have to just be able to get money through sponsors. Like, we have to be able to call specifically in those particular areas and maybe ask them what they want to see for a convention, right? So we always have Mr. Roofer, who's who's a great donor, always sponsors a very generous amount. But it's also about hopping on the phone for whoever the convention committee chair is and what the convention committee decides to do, and raising money really early on, not waiting until November or December to start sending out letters or making phone calls. I got very fortunate that I was able to pull it off at the last minute, but we might not be so lucky next time. I chalk it up to luck. So just something to keep in mind. Donors, perhaps selling something, providing additional value outside of the gala. That one's already kind of set in. So, and I do agree with Mr. Minoletti's point. There is, to a certain point, the cost of a delegate will reflect whether or not they're able to do that. But more often than not, as I've said in the past, with people that are willing to spend X amount of money, they usually don't mind spending more. The biggest clients are usually the easiest. It's the people that are always intending to spend the least, or always looking for a deal, that are, quite frankly, the biggest pains in the ass, and are unwilling to really donate any other additional money to the party. And I mean, we've seen lots of members do that here, right? So anyway, Mr. Strachan.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that I think Dr. McElroy put in the chat that the room rates, I guess, for the courtyard in Clovis were 199 to 209.
199 to 209, is that right?
I think
Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Okay. And again,
this is courtyard is a hotel that has suites, so they're all a larger room with a separate sleeping area and a pull-out sofa in the living area. So you can share it with more guests, but you are paying for a larger room.
And again, I just do want to stress to what I said earlier for, I think it was, well, I forget which proposal it was, but again, delegates get to choose where they want to stay. If they're all about saving money and they want to give more to the party, they can choose another venue, a cheaper venue to stay at, or a hotel rather, to stay at, and they can make accommodations accordingly. People that want to come and they want to spend, the least amount of money here so that they can have a better time at convention, whether it's to pay for packages for speakers or whatever, they can. But to Mr. Regeer's point, we really need to reevaluate how we do the whole package thing and how we maximize. We have to get people to buy packages is ultimately what it comes down to, but the return on that is also not always, it's not always stellar. So we need to figure out a good balance. And I look forward to working to whatever capacity the convention committee wants me to help with that. And then tagging as many people in as necessary to help with the marketing, to help with the revenue gain and all that stuff.
I just point, kind of answering Mr. Butt's question or his concern. Because of the proximity of Disneyland, there's a ton of super affordable hotels in that area that aren't going to be as nice, obviously, but will come in at a much lower price to the delegate. And with that, we've got 4 minutes left, so.
Okay, let's extend.
I'll move
to extend time by 15 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lima. Is there any objection to extending time on this agenda item for 15 minutes? Hearing none, time is extended. I know this is taking a bit longer than we anticipated, but these are good conversations to flesh out now and to have. These weren't done in the past, and this is why we encountered the huge issue that we encountered this past year, and I'd like to not make the same mistakes of the past, or repeat the mistakes of the past, rather. So assuming that Mr. Alstead and Ms. Eiler are done with this proposal, we can move on. I'm seeing a nod from the vice chair. So we'll go ahead and move on to Mr. Lima's proposal. We'll start with Oakland and then end in the order that we received them. So
I would actually like, sorry, Mr. Chair, I would actually like to withdraw my Oakland bid. I found out yesterday that they are not pet friendly. And I know that's like a big deal for libertarians.
Okay, so we can go ahead and move forward with the last proposal, which will be San Francisco.
Okay, so I'll just hit like some of the wickets. You guys can all read it too for yourselves, but pretty much they offered any weekend in February with the exception of President's Day weekend. But that weekend is still open and we could have that discussion. I was just kind of looking for like the cheapest thing going. And to start with this presentation with a logical fallacy, they were hit really hard from COVID. The last 2.5 years were rough. They're actually meeting with like some owners and executives about that. And one of the managers, and Graham can attest to this, is he came up and asked, is Robbie the Fire Bernstein and Dave Smith coming to this? I would love to meet them. So he's a libertarian.
Sorry, the manager said that?
Yeah, the manager of the hotel said that. So pretty much just to go over some numbers, it's $119 a night. I told them that minimum 50 people would be there. But they're not holding us to any minimum or any maximum. That they said they could accommodate more rooms or less rooms. No big deal. The only charge they did have us is for the meeting rooms, which counts for the entire weekend. Hold on one sec. Let me pull. Can you scroll up really quick, Chris? Yeah, so the only commitment they wanted us to do was the $4,000, which includes 6 breakout rooms and the main ballroom for the gala, which after taxes comes out to $4,560. They agreed to waive the $10,000 food and beverage minimum. And then to talk about the mimosa bar really quick. So what they do is it's $175 per 3 hours of whatever per bartender, and they can do that inside the convention hall. I also emailed you guys pictures from our tour yesterday. Graham and I went there.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown. So assuming that we do 6 hours, Their sales minimum is $300. It would come out to $550. The only caveat to that is it's $15 per drink instead of 10. So it's a little bit pricier, but if we sell 20 mimosas, we'll break even if that's something we wanted to do. For the $4,560, so they have 2 levels for where the breakout rooms are and the main gala where the convention will actually be held. If we were to sell like 6 tables in the main thing, I think we could even charge more for that because more people are going to go see that for business. If we sold 6 tables at like $300 a pop, and then we got 2 sponsors for $1,000, we're almost guaranteed to break even. So there would be like no net loss to the party at all once we hit that. I put down towards the bottom of the proposal how far it is from the 3 major airports: San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco. Oakland and San
Sorry,
Francisco.
really quickly, Mr. Lima, sorry to interrupt. Is someone unmuted or is that your background? There seems to be some
That is not
noise
me.
in the background. Can everyone mute really quickly,
That might
please?
be.
Oh, is that you, Mr. Brown? Would you mind muting really quickly while he finishes the proposal?
I heard you say Mr. Brown a minute ago. I don't know if you were talking to me or
Oh,
to the
I
other
meant
Mr.
Brown the Lesser. I meant Brown the Lesser. I'm sorry.
That's
I was
fine.
just reversing.
No problem. I was engrossed in the other meeting. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Sorry, Mr. Lima,
If
continue.
you scroll down a little bit, Chris, you can see what it was
Mr.
compared to
Secretary.
Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry. I'm just as bad as Matt, apparently, or Mr. Butts, apparently.
My goodness.
But yeah, you can see
Which part?
Just compared to last year. What we spent in Sacramento compared. The only big difference is in San Francisco, we're going to be paying for the meeting rooms. Other than that, parking, it's $50 a night, but if they book under the California Libertarian Party block, it would be $35 a night.
Is this valet parking or regular?
It's so the hotel has their own parking lot underneath the hotel, and it's secured with a gate. I was not sure if it was valet or not, though. I'm pretty sure it's regular. One thing that Graham and I did check out too is I wanted to keep it to under 2 homeless people per 10 cubic meter block, and it definitely passed that check. So it's actually in a really nice part of San Francisco, and as soon as you guys get those pictures that I emailed to you, you'll see that it's right across the street from Chinatown and right across the street from the financial district. The nice Chinese restaurants, and Graham found the one token Vietnamese restaurant that we ate lunch at for somehow. But yeah, parking surrounding, there's 2 parking structures. Obviously the hotel can't offer any guarantee for like safety of that. It still is San Francisco, but it is a really nice part in San Francisco. My car didn't get broken into, and I was parked there for 2 hours on the street in Chinatown. So I don't think it's that dangerous, but there are parking structures that are a little cheaper, and it being next to Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose, there are a bunch of other surrounding hotels that are cheaper. But for $119 in a really nice part of San Francisco, it's unbeatable. They're offering this because they're really hurting for business, like bad. And the hotel is beautiful. The only construction that they were under was an escalator, and the sales manager assured me that that would be fixed by the end of the day, let alone before February. But that's pretty much my proposal. I'm going to answer any type of questions you guys might have.
I have a few questions and then I'll pass it off. I was gonna, Ms. Stump beat me to it in the chat, but I was gonna ask it. The nearest BART station, if
4
memory
blocks,
serves, should be Montgomery,
4 blocks.
right?
Yeah, 4 blocks. It's all flat, no hills.
Okay. And then given that they are hurting for business, and this is why we might be getting a better deal than they would normally be offering, is there any concern about staff turnover? Will they be able to accommodate a large group 8 months out?
Yeah, so they were actually holding like a convention for people, and they had like this nice spread out. They were all like really willing to help and super friendly, and it did not look like there was a staffing issue. Granted, we went at I think like 1:30 p.m. You know, not like super peak like in the evening, but they looked good, and they had like everything taken care of. They had that set up, the convention set up, something similar to what we're going to have in the main ballroom, also already ready. Yeah, I don't see any issues with that.
To answer Mr. Butt's question in the chat, parking around the area is going to be metered parking, so it probably wouldn't be highly recommended, especially since you're in the FiDi/Chinatown. You might find the occasional parking that is free in some residential areas, specifically in Chinatown. But that means that they're going to have 2-hour limits and people are going to have to run back and forth if they don't want to get ticketed. And unlike most places in California, in San Francisco, since they get so much revenue from issuing parking citations, they will enforce that. But there are a lot of parking garages and stuff that you can pay for the day that would be cheaper in that whole bit. The next question really quickly before I pass it off to anyone else that might have a question would be, given that they're hurting, what is in your opinion, do you think that the meeting space ask or charge is going to be negotiable even a little bit more? If we promise to make up for it in other ways. So I know that they waived the food and beverage, but obviously people are going to be there, they're going to be drinking, that we're going to likely be paying for food there.
They're so willing to work with us. It was crazy. And like I said, Graham can back me up on this.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown the lesser can back me up on this. They are willing to work with us on anything. They realize that we're probably going to have more than 50 people there, and that we're going to probably surpass $10,000 in food. They're very intelligent for realizing that, as some hotels that I've called did not realize that. So I'm sure like they're not going to lose this deal over like a couple $100 or like $1,000. So yeah, I'm sure I could talk them down a little bit.
Okay, those are my questions for now. We'll let the vice chair go and then Mr. Butts.
You're Mr. Vice Chair.
No, is he muted?
He was.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'm curious about the meeting space charge. I mean, every hotel has a deal that you can not meet a food and beverage minimum and pay for your meeting space. I mean, I don't see that as an advantage. I see that more as a disadvantage. Do they also offer the ability to get that charge waived with a food and beverage minimum?
I'm sure if I called them and asked, hey, give us a $15,000 food and beverage minimum, will you waive this? They would be willing to play ball.
Yeah, I think that would be I was going to suggest something similar to that. That's what I was thinking of. But let's see. Yeah, that would be the way to go. I'm concerned about the meeting space because there is no actual benefit to that. That's my only concern.
We could break even on that so quickly, and it's so small than getting stuck with a $20,000 bill when we only sell $15,000 in meals. So
well, but even in that hypothetical, if we came $5,000 short of
we'd be saving $430.
We would owe $5,000. In your case, we owe $4,560 no matter what.
Yeah, so we're saving $300.
In the worst case, the more likely cases, we're spending $4,560 that we don't have to.
Yeah, but I would be willing to bet that since they're saving so much money on the room rates, that they'd be willing to spend more money at our hotel, and the party could raise more money.
Here's the thing. I'll say something before I pass it off to Mr. Butts. I think we're coming toward the tail end of this. This is the advantage that we have right now that we didn't have last year. A couple of things. One, as Mr. Butts pointed out at some point in the chat, this was never done before. So this is the first. Before it was the chair and whoever, they just came up and we were presented with an option and that was it. And it was a 5-minute discussion, maybe 10, and we would just vote on it and call it a day. That's how we got into the situation. So hammering all this stuff out now is really important so that everyone understands what they're voting on, and they can't say that we were just sold a lie or whatever. We're having this and fleshing this out. Two, if we pick a venue today, which we will, when we pick a venue, that's not to say that we're authorizing any specific contract at this time. So there is still a possibility. And let's say that for some reason, in worst case scenario, right? Mr. Lima goes back, they say, not only that, but the guy that offered you this deal is now fired, and now we're going to charge this amount, whatever. Should we, should we vote on this proposal, and or should this one pass? We're going to vote on whatever proposal everyone wants to. Should that pass, we also have the opportunity to immediately remove that option. Now we have other proposals to potentially fall back on. So we're still within the scope of the bylaws. It's not going to be this whole rump convention thing all over again where, Mr. Lima's in the bathroom and colluding with 2 other people or whatever to hold a rump convention. So I never thought I'd have to say those words again, but nevertheless. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, regardless of what proposal we choose, if something goes when we actually get the contract and something, because again, these were all things that they told us. We don't know what the service fees are. For all we know, Dr. McElroy's service fee is 50%. And we don't, people can just arbitrarily decide whatever they want. And maybe that's not the venue we want to go with. So we can, with new information, change this really quickly in July if need be, but we can get the ball rolling with something. So we're not locked and set in stone. The notice doesn't have to be given by the secretary until, what is it, 120 days before convention, something like that, whatever the bylaws say. But just wanted to throw that there. So I think we can wrap this up and come up to a vote before then. I'll let Mr. Butts go and then Mr. Graham Brown.
Okay, so I had a little bit of, so what Gary just said to Michael about
Mr. Vice Chair,
about what the vice chair said to Mr. Lima about the about not being an advantage to not having a food and drink minimum, and that we're actually that, because I was thinking that, okay, so if we don't hit 20,000, then we owe the difference, which could be like less than the 4560. Because I was thinking that this was like the most cheapest option for the party, because every dollar after 4560 would be profit, whereas the other one is like every dollar after 20,000 is profit. But now I'm a little confused. But I guess my question to Mr. Lima is, how big are the meeting rooms? You saw the meeting rooms. Can you visualize 200 people in that room comfortably?
Yes,
Not
so
like,
it can fit 300 people, 200 people in a classroom setting very comfortably with extra like space in the back. So it can fit up to 300 people.
okay.
And
all right.
And the gala would be held in the same main ballroom. They would need about an hour and a half to 2 hours to turn it around, though.
And like, so we have, so with the Orange County proposal, we have to meet 20,000, and then every dollar after that is then profit. Whereas in this one, every dollar after 4560 is profit. Is that right?
Yes.
Can Gary agree with
the
Michael?
vice chair.
Disagree with Michael? Can the vice
I want
chair
to
agree to
be really
disagree with
clear,
Michael?
really quickly,
Mr. Lima?
just to avoid the crosstalk and stuff. This is why everyone here knows each other. We're all friends. But the reason that I'm harping on decorum is because I want to make sure that we keep this professional and that we don't get into some, free for all, unprofessional meeting or anything like that. So it's really important to remember that we are in business, and that's why I'm harping on decorum for these things. It's not to pick on any individual person, but that is important. Will the vice chair answer Mr. Butt's question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I understand what we spend on food and drink after 20,000. The party doesn't get anything over that. That goes to the hotel.
Okay, so I
So
guess
it's just a
I'm
question
wondering
of what the only expense or revenue in this whole thing is the room fees.
Okay.
And so the only question, and then a possible expense is is the room, the meeting rooms. Right, and which is a possible expense if we don't meet the food and drink minimum.
I'm trying to look at where the like how profit looks, what profit looks like in each proposal. That's where I'm thinking. That's where my mind is right now. Like, how do we profit on each proposal?
So
like,
that was Mr. Regeer's point from earlier. So that's something I'm sure that he'll want to touch on that in just a minute, because right now we can't. All we're doing is trying to stop the bleeding. That's what this does. Is it allows, what we're looking at right now is the potential for getting revenue, for making money. We can't know how much we're going to make. That's going to be contingent on the convention committee to decide based on what they decide to do and how all of that works out. So I'll let, unless Mr. Lima wants to respond to Mr. Butts.
Well, obviously this doesn't count for like AVPs and like all the other stuff, but from the hotel, like once we hit that 45, 60, anything over that could be potential profit. One cool thing is they're also allowing us, included in that 45, 60 is the table space for exhibits, which we can sell. And it being a presidential year, like I said, I'm sure we could sell like 5 or 6 tables easily. And Mr. Graham Brown saw the 2 locations where they would let the tables be. One is definitely more sought after than the other, well, because they would get more traffic, and we can upcharge that fee to cover almost half of it already just off of exhibit tables.
Okay. We'll pass the floor to immediate former treasurer of the Lima for Hayward campaign, Mr. Graham Brown.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it clear, in case it wasn't for Mr. Butts, that essentially it's like you get the meeting room for free as long as you commit to making that minimum, right? So that's the distinction. If we're worried about making that $20,000 mark or whatever, then you're kind of giving up that cost, right? You're not risking paying $10,000 if you only get to 10,000, but you're also not getting the discount.
Mr. Chair, I move to extend time for 5 minutes.
Okay, I will second that. Is there any objection to extending time for 5 minutes? Hearing none, we are extended for 5 minutes. Finish, Mr. Graham.
I also don't think that that we're doing the level of analysis to really get at like particular differences in profitability. It would depend on how much does the catering cost, how much is the AV equipment or whatever we're going to spend going to cost, how much is, there's a lot of other factors that would go into like getting to that level of detail to really suss out more particular like figures to be accurate about where revenue is going to be. But I will say that for me personally, I know I'm excited about these kinds of locations where you can walk around and kind of be part of like a major city and go to other restaurants if you want to. You can stay in other hotels, walking distance, just a couple blocks away. I didn't really get the feeling that the other locations proposed were as walkable or as interesting as a destination as a city. And I know everyone likes to crap all over San Francisco, and it does have its problems. But at least for me, I know I would be excited to travel there. And I suspect I'm not the only kind of person that would be excited to go to a city like that. So that's all I wanted to say about it. Thanks.
Okay, and Mr. Treasurer, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think Mr. Butts is asking the right questions, and I think Mr. Brown just answered it, right? Is that we really don't have all the variables addressed here. So if profitability is a concern here, right, then I don't know if you know what the time constraints are in this. I know the 120-day thing and whatnot, but it may be worth stepping back and taking a longer look at these proposals. I don't know if that's feasible, but yeah, you know, considering our budget, you know, the total budget of the party, the expenditure on the convention last year exceeded 50% of our current year's budget. So, you know, I do think it's relevant, and
Mr. Treasurer,
maybe worth considering.
Can I speak on that? So I would like to work with Ms. Stomp, Mr. Alvarez, and Mr. Graham Brown on that. And the sooner we have like a general idea of like the location we're going to be, the sooner we can start advertising this and pumping out and selling packages. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to do that. I think we could sell a bunch of early bird packages. People would be excited to come to San Francisco or even Orange County, because they're major cities and it's a presidential year. So I definitely think it should be done in one of those two. If I were to become the convention chair and it ends up being in San Francisco, this would be my only other committee that I would be on, minus the awards committee, which we know like gets worked to death, but I could make time for sure. I would be completely focused on having a really successful convention to set up any candidates that want to run in 2024. I want to make sure they don't run into any of the complications that I ran into with requesting money from the party. And I definitely want it to be an overall net positive, and that'll be all I'm focused on until February.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this agenda item? Okay. We're going to do something a little unorthodox here. Will the secretary stop the screen share? Okay. So 3 great proposals, a lot of good conversations been happening throughout, which is great. And this is the purpose for this, not just one person unilaterally making these decisions, because we need to have these discussions. By show of hand, if you're an executive committee member, how comfortable would you be voting on any proposal right now based on the information that you heard? Either show of hand on the screen or show of hand on okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is technically a majority.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Halsey was raising her hand as well.
Yeah, I counted her, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, she's 8.
I don't oppose.
Sorry.
I don't oppose taking a vote right now, but I'm
Okay.
not. I'm like 100%, 100% comfortable.
Okay. Just to get an idea, let's do it this way. So everyone put your hands down for a minute. Okay. Oh wait, let's put Mr. Strachan's hand down. Okay. So how many people would be likely to vote for Dr. McElroy's proposal in Clovis? Raise your hand. Either on the screen or, wow, really? None?
Well,
Man.
I'm tied between the Clovis and the San Francisco proposal. So,
Well, I'm not, this is an official vote.
So,
How many of you would
okay.
be likely to vote for this vote? Raise your hand. Either on the screen or with the emoji. Wow, just the parliamentarian, I guess.
What was that question? I'm sorry.
So how many people would be likely to vote for Dr. McElroy's Clovis proposal? Just like, this is an informal poll. We're not, this isn't, I'm just trying to gauge the room here before deciding how to move forward. Oh, someone just took their hand down. Okay, so wow, man, you guys know that she's not like a Jill Biden doctor. She may not be like a real doctor, but she's still a Jill Biden doctor. There's a lot of hate here. Okay, so one person. Okay, put your hands down. All right, how many of you would be likely to vote for the vice chair's proposal in Orange County? Raise your hand. I was gonna say, if the vice chair doesn't raise his hand, my God. Okay, so we have 3 and 1 so far. How many of you would be, look, now everyone hands down. How many of you would be willing to vote for Mr. Lima's proposal in San Francisco? Okay. How many of you, hands down?
Mr. Chair? Yeah, if can I speak?
Yes, Mr. Lima.
I don't know how to professionally ask that. If we do end up going to a real vote, I would propose, as you know, Victoria and I, or Ms. Leponchek and I, are about to go to Bermuda for the week. I would propose that if I do win, give me a month to draft the contract, and maybe we can meet again in an official capacity like this. We could all, as the executive committee, review the contract and everything before making an official decision. But we would need to start getting the ball rolling with that, because I don't want to keep the hotel waiting.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? Kind of.
Yeah.
We can talk about that offline more.
So that was a point of order, but yes, noted. Okay, so the last question that I was going to ask is, how many of you do not feel comfortable voting on any venue today? Show of hands. Okay, so just to recap really quickly here, we are at time and probably have been, but we did an informal vote here. So we had 1 that would probably vote for Clovis, 3 that would probably vote for Orange County, and the rest that would probably vote for San Francisco. With that being said, I will now entertain motions on a venue location for the 2024 LPCA convention.
I motion to have the 2024 LPCA convention in San Francisco, contingent on us having another meeting to review the contract and go over it all together.
Yeah, so just, okay, so we had a motion made by Mr. Lima to adopt his proposal. It was seconded by Ms. Hallisey. I will again make it clear that we will have our quarterly meeting in July. That's the last agenda item where we will schedule that. So by that time, we will have to have a formal contract that we'll review. Preferably before then, it will be shared amongst the private list so that Mr. Regier can do his financial wizardry and all of that. So, okay, so.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Sure.
Well, we're gonna pick it at the end of the meeting, correct? You said, that's what you just said?
The meeting, it will be scheduled. The
in
next meeting
July.
will be scheduled, yes.
And probably towards the end of July, right? But
Probably.
hopefully. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so, all right. Southern California people are upset. I'm reading the chat. I get it. This is out of my control. Motion has been made by Mr. Lima, seconded by Ms. Hallisey. Is there any further discussion on this? Oh, we can't. We're at time. So any further discussion would warrant an extension of time. So we'll go ahead and move to a roll call vote. Will the secretary please take the roll? Again, call the roll. So again, of an aye vote, you're voting for the San Francisco proposal for the 2024 annual convention. A nay vote means that you are against San Francisco, and that's really poor form given that it's Pride. Anyway, that being said, will the secretary please take the roll?
All right, I'll start with Mr. Alvstad.
I'll abstain.
I will also abstain. Mr. Regier,
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Butts,
Yay.
Ms. Stump,
Yes.
Mr. Ham,
I vote no.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Hallisey,
Yes.
Ms. Lepacek,
Yes.
Mr. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. Minoletti,
Yes.
Mr. Nichols,
Aye.
Mr. Strachan.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 11 to 1 to 2 to 0.
The chair will not vote on this motion, but the motion passes with a majority. So as of now, the 2024 annual convention is in San Francisco. I will say that again, things are subject to change, as we found out last year. Mr. Lima has requested time to get the official. Nothing is official until there is a contract. So if something were to go sideways, we still have other proposals to fall back on, and it seems like Orange County would be the second possibility. So hopefully we can do something with that if it falls through. It's good to have other options and not have to scramble at the last minute.
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Lima.
can I address the committee and ask a question or a point of information? I guess.
Sure.
Would the committee like me to find out if they would be willing to waive the meeting space for a food and beverage minimum instead, and possibly draft 2 different contracts? Is that kind of like the general consensus?
I don't think that that's necessary. But I would just like to see, to Mr. Brown's point in the chat, is just that what I don't think we've had before, having done 2 years with financial standards and 1 year with budget, is a real pre-convention budget of all line items, AV, all in. Like, what's our all-in budget? What do we think we're going to spend? What do we think we're going to bring in? That's what I'd like to see. And I think it's probably going to be a wash. I don't think it'll be a big deal between, like you said, between the food and the meeting room space. We'll spend that much on food, I think. So
Mr. Regier, would you be willing to be on the committee with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about
Well, we're
that. I
not
think
there.
that's
We're
next, right?
not there yet. Yeah, we're not there yet. Okay. All right.
I
so
wasn't,
this
I
is-
wasn't aware Mr. Lehman was appointing committees there.
Yeah, Mr.
Sorry,
Lima, it's not
this-
about decorum unless
I should read the ops manual, I guess.
it seems that the vice chair is very unhappy right now. I will remind him that Mr. Lima is somewhat lovable sometimes. So he's taking himself off screen. He doesn't want us to see his tears. Okay, so that's all done. We will address this again, and we'll talk offline and in the private thread about how we're going to move forward with this. And again, I want to stress to everybody, nothing is done until the contract is set in stone. And I'm very much committed to making this a Mr. Alvarez with a banger. I like it. So I will just remind everybody that nothing's set in stone until the contract is signed. And my priority is that of the treasurer, which is to make money for this. We were able to make money last year. I would like to exceed that. I would like to double the just under $7,000 in revenue that we made. And I'm not talking about CSC. I'm talking about for the general fund. So I'm talking whatever we make additionally to the CSC is fantastic too, but we need to make money for the party as well. Excellent. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thanks everyone for powering through elections. So a lot of the rest of the agenda should be pretty straightforward. I don't anticipate that we'll be here past 9:30, but we'll power through here. So elections, we have 10 minutes each scheduled. It shouldn't take that long. For awards committee, I'll remind everybody that we have 5 applicants and 5 vacancies. So we have Mr. Lauren Dean, Chair of Riverside County, Ms. Meredith Hayes, Secretary of Contra Costa County, Ms. Victoria Lepacek, Executive Committee member on this for this here, she's here. Mr. Lima, who's also a member of the Executive Committee, and Dr. Mary Beth Yuskevich, who is the an at-large for Fresno County. I will now open nominations for the awards committee.
I would like to nominate Dr. Mary Beth.
Okay, Mr. Lima nominates Dr. Mary Beth Yuskevich. We won't ask if she accepts her nomination because she did email indicating her desire to serve. Are there any other nominations?
I would like to nominate Miss Victoria Lepacek. Can I just nominate a couple people?
You can.
I would like to nominate Miss Victoria Lepacek and jurors Dr. Meredith Hayes.
Okay, so Mr. Lima has nominated Ms. Hayes and Ms. Lepacek. Are there any other nominations?
Someone better nominate me.
I will nominate Mr. Michael Lima.
Mr. Strachan nominates Mr. Lima. And I will nominate, the chair will nominate Mr. Lauren Dean. Are there any other nominations for awards committee? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Is there discussion on the awards committee nominations or nominees? Okay. Now, normally we would ask, everyone has already written about their desire to serve and what qualifies them or why they want to serve, so we can skip that part. We'll go to a vote. Is there any objection to voting the awards committee in as a slate of 5? 5 people were nominated to fill 5 vacancies. Is there any objection to that? Okay, then I will move to nominate the 5 nominees, Mr. Lauren Dean, Ms. Meredith Hayes, Ms. Victoria Lepacek, Mr. Michael Lima, and Dr. Mary Beth Yuskevich to the awards committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nichols. And I guess I did it backwards. Now there would be a discussion, but there's no point. So we'll go ahead and assuming that there's no objection, we will go ahead. Well, I already asked, there is no objection. So we'll go ahead and that's how we'll vote. So assuming that there's no objection, that is the awards committee. We good? I did that backwards and I kind of messed up my cadence there. It's all right. Everybody gets one. All right, moving forward to the next committee, convention committee. So we had one applicant for this committee. It was Mr. James Schumacher. I do believe that he intended to be on the committee after speaking with him. He does the AV stuff, so he wasn't trying to be committee chair. but it was to indicate his desire to serve on the committee as he has in years past to provide AV service and support. But we will now open nominations for a convention committee. Are there any nominations for convention committee? Really? This one
I
seems obvious.
Nominate Michael Lima.
Mr. Graham Brown nominates Mr. Michael Lima. Are there any other nominations for convention committee? Hearing none, nominations are closed. So now I would entertain a motion to nominate the convention committee chair. To appoint the convention committee chair.
Mr. Chair, I know if for some reason it doesn't happen in San Francisco because we don't like the contract, what would be the contingency plan if I am nominated as convention chair? Would I just step down and this executive committee would nominate a new convention committee?
Correct.
Okay.
In the event that something happened and you no longer wanted to be committee chair as a result of it not being in the Bay Area, you would resign and the executive committee would appoint a new committee chair.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I will now entertain motions so Mr. Lima is the only applicant. Would anyone like to move to appoint him as the convention committee chair?
I'll motion.
Mr. Alvarez has moved to appoint Mr. Lima convention committee chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Strachan. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on this motion, and we'll do it this way. Is there any objection to Mr. Lima being the convention committee chair for 2024? Hearing none, congratulations, Mr. Lima. You are the new convention committee chair. Per the OPM, you are allowed to choose your committee. It can consist of however many members you deem necessary, and you can also remove members as you deem necessary. So reach out to those individuals that you would like on the committee. Again, I will offer my services in an advisory capacity. I do not wish to be on the committee, but I will attend meetings that I'm requested to be at or help you offline as need be. So just throw that out there. So congratulations, Mr. Lima, and congratulations to everyone on the awards committee. Last committee on the docket here is Credentials Committee. So this one is the interesting one. So again, we have 7 members on this committee, but only 6 vacancies. The secretary is automatically on this committee per the OPM change. So we have Mr. Gary Alvstead, Mr. Joshua Clark, Mr. Lauren Dean, Mr. Jamie Dolzak, Mr. Chris Kinnear, Dr. Catherine McElroy, and Mr. Tom Nichols. So I will now open nominations to, if everyone is nominated, then we will, we can't do a slate thing. So that's when, as I mentioned over email, we would move to an email vote where we would let the secretary know who, and you would have to select 6 names or at least up to 6 names for this position. So are there any nominations for Credentials Committee?
I'll nominate the vice chair.
All right, Mr. Alvarez nominates Mr. Alvstead. Any other nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Tom Nichols.
Mr. Strachan nominates Mr. Tom Nichols.
I'll nominate
Dr. McElroy.
Wait, sorry, Mr. Nichols, go ahead.
I nominate Dr. McElroy.
All right, Mr. Nichols nominates Dr. Catherine McElroy. Mr. Vice Chair, go ahead. Or who was it that was going to speak? Someone else was trying to speak.
I was going to nominate Miss Dr. McElroy as well.
Miss Doctor. All right, so we still have, I will go ahead and nominate Mr. Lauren Dean and Mr. Chris Kinnear. I thought they did a great job last time around. Are there any other nominations? There is one applicant who has not yet been nominated. Should anyone wish to make that nomination? Going once, going twice. All right, nominations are now closed. So again, we have Mr. Gary Alvstead, Mr. Joshua Clark, Mr. Lauren Dean, Mr. Chris Kinnear, Dr. Catherine McElroy, and Mr. Tom Nichols, all nominated for Credentials Committee. I will move to I will move to appoint the slate. Is there any objection to that? Or I'll move to appoint the slate. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stump. Is there any objection to adopting the slate as read? Hearing none, congratulations, Credentials Committee. Again, Mr. Alstead, Mr. Clark, Mr. Dean, Mr. Gannier, Dr. McElroy, and Mr. Nichols. Cool. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is still committee related. So it's I'm just going to go ahead and say that I want to be on Strategic Planning Committee. I've been to every meeting anyway. I didn't plan on being on that committee, but here I am. So I'm helping direct that along with Ms. Eiler and Mr. Dew and Mr. Graham Brown. I think Mr. Graham Brown's on that committee. He is, right? Yeah. Okay, I remember.
Yes.
So I just want to officially be on it and just call it a day. So I will move to appoint myself to the Strategic Planning Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Graham Brown. Any discussion? Cool. We'll move to a vote. Is there any objection to me being appointed officially to the Strategic Planning Committee? Hearing none, yay me, I have another thing to do. All right, next item on the agenda. It is a motion to appoint Mr. Marcus Schuff to the Website and Information Technology Committee, otherwise known as WITCOM. He is a new member. I've spoken with him personally. He seems very gifted and talented in web development, so I was very happy. I encouraged him to apply for this committee, and I'm glad that he did so. So I will move to appoint Mr. Marcus Schuff to WITCOM. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Lima. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Is there any objection to appointing Mr. Schuff to the WITCOM? Hearing none, congratulations to Mr. Schuff. He is the newest WITCOM member. All right, so next item on the agenda, LP National Membership Challenge. All of you got an email earlier today. I sent it through Neon to the membership list of, I think, just under 4,000 people, just promoting the National Membership Challenge. Where you all come in, it's through a variety of mechanisms here. So what I'd like to do, all of you in your respective counties really need to start pushing national membership. As I stated in the email, and as you all very well know, having 10% of the National Libertarian Party membership across the country is what keeps us our own region. We don't have to share with terrible states like, I don't want to single anyone out, but any other state other than us is terrible, like Kentucky or Pennsylvania, whatever, those states. So I really need you guys to, first of all, if you are not renewed or you are not a national member, I strongly encourage you to renew immediately and just get that out of the way, knock it out, or go ahead and sign up if you're not a national. I think most of you are, but if you're not a national member, please sign up. It's $25. If the vice chair can drop the link in the chat for LP National, that'd be great. But it's $25 for the year, and you will need to be a national dues paying member in order to be a delegate in Washington, D.C. for convention, which is in 2024. So this would cover you for the year. This would cover you through the 2024 convention happening in D.C. When you go to your respective county meetups or any other libertarian event, I really need you guys to sell this and promote it to people. It is incredibly important that we retain our Region 4 status. Just to be very clear to everybody, we're not in danger of losing it. This is a push that we do every 2 years. It just usually happens in October. And this time we're not doing that. So I wanted to start early anyway, and it just so happened I spoke with the LNC chair. She was wanting to do a membership challenge sometime soon anyway. So she said, how about June? I said, great, let's go ahead and do that. And other state chairs jumped on board with that. So I would like to not only retain our status, but also beat the other states, because California is good at so few things. Let's be good at this, at least within libertarian circles. So, oh, that's a great question, Mr. Miniletti. So there's two ways that you can do this. The link has not come out from national to do, so the link doesn't really do anything outside of just giving us immediate credits that we know. We always go back and we can double check anyway. Obviously they put their state and their county in, regardless of how, or their state in, and then the county comes later. So there is a joint membership link that is on our website. I'm sorry, it's on the, we do a redirect link, but it's on the National Party website. We get the dues regardless. So it doesn't really change anything for us. We still get half the dues because they're California dues paying members. So the dues sharing applies to us regardless. We will get half of that money. It doesn't change anything. So it just helps keep track a little bit better. So if they're a new member or they want to join both, or there's someone that you just recruited that's brand new and you want to get them involved on both fronts, have them come in through the joint membership link. If I get a specific one that's going to help the LNC track California status in real time, I'll go ahead and share that and email that out with the next email that I send. I'm going to send one email a week to the actual membership, and then I'll just do stuff within the Google groups to remind people. But we will be getting credit, so this is good for us because we get money from it, and also we retain our regional status. So it was a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So again, all of you need to do your national membership. All of you need to really push people to do it. And I'm going to be harping on this for the rest of the month. So really be salespeople here and bring this forward. Again, the county affiliate that gets the most national memberships and or renewals during the month of June, but I started it sooner and I got the okay to do it, so it's fine. And we already had double digits come in between May 15th and today. So the county affiliate that has the largest dues paying national members or renewals will get a reward or a prize from the LNC. There's nothing set in stone as to what that may be because different counties might have different needs. So that's going to be worked out later, but there will be a prize for this. So county chairs that are on this call, Ms. Stump, Mr. Strachan, Dr. McElroy, Mr. Bird, Mr. Kiss, Mr. Ham, a lot of county chairs on here. I'm probably sure I missed one, but that's fine. No, I didn't. No, I'm good. So make sure that you really promote it and get something out of it, especially if you're trying to start up. So anyway, any questions on the National Membership Challenge? Everyone's going to go sign up for national right now. That's why everyone's quiet. You guys are all clicking on the links right now and doing it. Awesome. That's what I like to hear. All right, next item on the agenda, NDAs. I sent that email out earlier today. Everyone on the executive committee should have an NDA filled out and signed. A lot of you have done it already. You did it previously, or you did it when I sent out the email, which is fine, but the rest of you have not. Come next week or after the weekend, I'm going to ping the secretary to send out an email to the private list and somewhat publicly shame those of you that have not signed the NDA yet. You will all eventually have access to something. So it's really important that executive committee members have it, and it's just a standard practice and should be moving forward for county executive committee members as well. So we always have to put a stop to everything when it comes to LPCA committees or other stuff when it comes to neon access and all of that stuff. If you already, yes, Mr. Butts is correct. If you've done one before March of 2023, you need to do the one that I just sent out. We don't have records of a lot of the other ones. I don't really want to get into the details as to why, but the way that it was done before when we had an executive director, a lot of it is either inaccessible, or it's lost. So we really just have to get them re-signed, and they should have my signature on there anyway now moving forward. And Mr. Edgar was gracious enough to do some lawyery amendments and stuff to make it a little cleaner and a little bit more pertinent to our purposes. So, Mr. Lima.
We're gonna be on a boat for the next week, but as soon as that's done, and I get back to California, I will sign it and send it over. So please don't publicly shame Miss LaPlacic and I. I mean, you can. Well, I really don't care. But
you can. Well, we're gonna do it in the email. Yeah, Mr. Edgar is known for his humor, so I'm sure that he'll definitely say something really funny and shame you. He's one of the meanest people I've ever met. He only lives to publicly shame people. So yeah, that'll happen. So no, thank you for reminding us all that you'll be on a boat. I can't think of that Lonely Island song now, but yes, sign that as soon as you get back, please. And again, you can just do it with your finger. It's a PDF, so you can just make sure it's an actual signature, whether it's something that your computer does or you do it on your own. It's fine. I will countersign, give you the copy, and then you'll have it. You need this for neon access, L2, data access, and then anything else that requires a member's personal information, which specifically pertains to certain committees. So anyway, and then get other people to sign. If you know XCOM members, you chairs too, Mr. Strachan, Ms. Stump, Mr. Kiss, get your executive committee officers at the very least to sign this NDA, or their neon access or other access will be cut off by June 10th. We really need to get these in. And we have had a slew of them come in today, so that's good. Anything else on this topic? Cool. All right. These are the next two items that will probably take a little bit of time, but we should be able to power through these. So the California Two-Party Coalition lawsuit, it's something that I talked about. I was thinking about going into executive session for this, but I don't think it's going to be necessary because it's going to be fine. So those of you know already or remember that I had a conference call. I was there in person. It was with LNC Council Oliver Hall. It was Richard Winger, who's been a member and activist in San Francisco for a long time, members of the Green Party, Peace and Freedom Party, different leadership, different members of the leadership of those respective organizations. So those of you that don't know what the two-party system here is in California, you all should. It's what prevents libertarians from really being able to make headway and get elected into office. What we were discussing was just the broad idea of perhaps bringing a lawsuit against the state of California. This is not something that would happen immediately. We don't know what the viability is of us potentially winning this, how much effort should be expelled into this project, and you know, whether we would be able to find a lawyer to take this on that would do this, you know, what those legal fees would cost and that whole bit. So I think Ms. Halsey was on the call, Mr. Ham was on the call, Dr. McElroy was on the call. So I think that this would be worth pursuing at the very least in an exploratory fashion. So I would really like to see, I just want to hear people's general thoughts on this. You guys got the information. Is this something, I told them that I'd give them something to report. We can also kind of table this and move this to July. But the ask of them, or the purpose of the coalition initially, was to gauge interest from the Libertarian Party and for us to gauge interest all the way around the seriousness of other political organizations to whether or not this would be a lawsuit that we would want to pursue, or at the very least see if it's worth pursuing. So those are the stages that we're in. Everyone seems bought in on obviously two-party being bad and us wanting to do something about it. It's just a matter of whether filing a lawsuit is the way to go here. So in order for us to be able to move forward with this, as you all heard Mr. Butt say earlier during public comment or during the agenda item with the LNC appointment, I'm stretched really thin. I can't be on all those meetings. You'd be committing to maybe a meeting once every couple of months, doing some cursory research on the two-party system, like other lawsuits, other precedents. You would get access to LNC Council Oliver Hall. He broke a lot of stuff down. He has a lot of good information and insight in other people that have this. Let me just, I guess, pull the room and gauge some sort of appetite. Good night, Mr. Brown the Greater. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope we were a little bit more exciting than the bylaws call, but who knows? We're more entertaining at least. Have a good night. Thank you. So I just want to gauge what the appetite for this. Have a good one. So I just want to gauge what the appetite for this is. Is this something that someone would be willing to spearhead and be willing to meet on a virtual call with leaders of the Green Party, Peace and Freedom? I forget what there's other ones too. And kind of be part of this exploratory committee to see if it's worth it for us to pursue this. Again, nothing would probably happen until 2026. We'd be getting everything together, filing motions, doing that whole bit, and finding someone willing to take on the case. So this is very early stuff. But I did tell them that I'd give them some sort of response based on what the perceived appetite for this is. So what are our thoughts?
If we need someone to go on and start like cooperating with them and seeing what's what, this is like a personal interest of mine as well. So I'd be willing to meet with Pro Rep.
Oh, this is before Pro Rep, but we're getting onto that. That's the next one. But this is two-party. They're kind of like the same, but different. So it's attacking the same problem from two different sides. So, and one might be more viable than the other. But okay, so I have buy-in from Mr. Alvarez. Mr. Butts.
I'm pretty supportive of it. I just want to make sure that our brand doesn't get misused by other parties. and that we like these groups, what they're trying to do, they can't accomplish it without us, because we are
Correct.
the third largest party in America. So they can't do anything without us. And so I want to make sure that whoever we're sending to represent us, you know, that everyone understands that, like, we're the big dog at the table. You know what I mean? And that, our brand doesn't get misused. That's my only point.
Okay. So I seem to have buy-in from Ms. Hallisey, Mr. Alvarez, and Mr. Butts. I don't know what Mr. Minoletti's comment means. Is same, but does that mean, was that in reference to this? Are you willing to be part of this, or?
Yeah, I'm willing to be part of it.
Okay, Mr. Minoletti. Mr. Strachan, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I think this is probably worth getting involved in. My suspicion is that our next item, that this is probably going to be better attacked and more directly attacked from a political, standpoint rather than the legal one. But I think we just had an attorney, I believe a newly qualified attorney, Mr. Alvarez, said that he'd be willing to do some of this work. And I think that's a very generous offer, and I think we should take him up on it.
Okay. I have a question for the secretary now that our parliamentarian left at the worst time. We took forever to get here. And I guess the vice chair too. I'm able to create ad hoc committees without motions. Is that correct?
Let me just take a moment to look at that.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go back to this agenda item then while he looks that up, because it's going to be the same. It's kind of like two items in one. So right now, just to make sure I'm clear, what I'm planning on doing is I'd like to create an ad hoc committee, and that would consist of Mr. Minoletti, Mr. Alvarez, Ms. Hallisey, and Mr. Butts to be the representatives for the Libertarian Party of California. You guys will have meetings amongst yourselves, and I will give you the contact information to the other members of the leadership that I spoke with on that meeting. And then you guys you'll connect in July. Excuse me, I'm sorry, mid-June. I told them that they'd have an answer from us by mid-June. I have contact information for other two people that were interested in this from the LNC side anyway, outside of Mr. Hall, who, just to be very clear, he is not committing to taking this on yet or anything. He wants to see how this plays out. But also Mr. Bill Redpath, who's the alternate for Region 6, I believe, on the LNC. So I would put you in contact with them. I am proposing creating an ad hoc committee of you four, where you are the representatives for the Libertarian Party of California. You would keep me up to date on anything that I may need to do, or keep me up to date on whether, and I would trust you all to be very blunt with me. If it's not going anywhere, these aren't serious people, and this isn't worth pursuing in this avenue, then we'll just pull the plug and call it a day and focus our efforts elsewhere. But I want to be able to say that we at least tried, that was the ask, and that's what we should, and that's what I want to actually do. So is everyone clear on that? That's why I was asking the secretary to look that up to see. If not, I can make a formal motion now to create the committee, and I don't have to do it later. But I think I can. I'm not sure I can. But it sounds like. But while we look that up, since they're kind of related, we'll move on to the Pro Rep Coalition. So this would basically be the same thing. Yeah, but that doesn't say ad hoc or.
It would be referred to as a special committee, which can be established by a majority vote. So okay. Yes, we could. Yes, if we passed a motion, we could establish a special committee.
Okay, let's just do this then. Let's just do it while we're still on this agenda item. So, okay, I will move to create a special committee discovering the viability of a lawsuit against the California two-party system with a coalition of leaders from other political organizations consisting of Mr. Chris Minoletti, Mr. Alberto Alvarez, Mr. Matthew Butts, and Ms. Trendlin Hallisey. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nichols. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll move to a
I have
vote.
a point of
go ahead.
information on this. Would this motion authorize that committee to authorize any coalition or any other group to use the Libertarian Party logo or put it in their documentation or anything like that?
No, all committees serve at the pleasure of the executive committee, especially per this bylaw citation. So anything that has to do with party assets or anything related to the party, which we borrow. So the Libertarian Party logo, the party of principle motto, everything is trademarked and owned by the LNC or LP National. So we have permission to use that, and we can give permission to other libertarians, but they can't use it. So, I'm glad that you brought that up. So to kind of curb the any sort of hesitation on Mr. Butt's end, this committee would not be authorized to speak on behalf of the to speak on behalf of the LPCA or make any sort of moves that we are not authorized. So you would find out what the viability of this lawsuit is, see how serious these people are. Once you find out if this is something that you guys decide amongst yourselves that this is worth pursuing or not, you come back and you report it to the executive committee, and then we will all take formal action on this, if that makes sense.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for asking. Cool. And yes, Mr. Butts, you just did agree to do more work. Welcome. Welcome to the club. Cool. So seconded by Mr. Nichols. Is there any further discussion on this? We're at discussion. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Is there any objection to the creation of the special committee whose purpose is to find out what the viability is of a California two-party or a lawsuit against California's two-party system with a broader coalition of political organizational leadership? Cool. Hearing none, the motion passes. Excellent. Congratulations, special committee members. Man, I wish Mr. Lima was on that because I could have made a special joke, but I guess I'll save that for a different time. This convention committee is the special committee now. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. So pro-rep coalition. Almost everyone, I believe, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Would that make the executive committee also a special committee since I'm on the executive committee?
I will not dignify that with a response. You're lucky I haven't booted you from this call. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the pro-rep coalition. So really quickly, just refresh my memory. By show of hands, how many of you were on that call? I'm going to switch to audio, sorry.
Can everyone hear me? I had to switch because my AirPods just died.
I hear you.
Okay. So there are more of you on that call. That's fine. I think a majority of that were on that call. So what they're asking is basically the same thing that the two-party coalition is asking, which is to accept it, to Mr. Graham Brown's point. Well, I can just say Mr. Brown now since the other Mr. Brown is gone. They want to be able to use the Libertarian Party logo and be able to promote us on their website and as part of this coalition. So for those of you that don't know, what their big ask was, and I did email the presentation out to everybody and shared it. I'll ask this, did most of you get a chance to look at the presentation or any of the notes that I sent out after that meeting?
Were they different from the like actually being a part of the meeting?
No, I just
okay.
sent us all the stuff and I sent it to the entire executive committee.
I watched most of the meeting, if that helps.
Oh, and the video link. Yeah, okay. So someone correct me if I'm wrong, but their basic ask is that what they want to do is they want to approach the same issue, but from a legislative point. They don't think that a lawsuit is really the way to go. They think that building a coalition and getting people on board to do this legislatively would be the way to go. Now, what's really cool about this is Mr. Strachan brought this up during the email thread and I asked his question and I shamelessly pretended it was mine. But I can give him credit here where it counts. That was just a whatever meeting. So we get to kind of run the table on this. We get to decide what that looks like as far as proportional representation. We get to direct the way that we want to go about it if we want our image and likeness, so to speak, to be part of this coalition or the face of this coalition. So that's really cool. We can propose whatever we want. If they reject it or they don't have buy-in from the rest of the board or the rest of the people, then it's, you know, then I guess we can always leave whenever we want. We're not really hamstrung by anything. We're not signing our life away. We can be a part of this as long as it makes sense for the party to be a part of this. If they don't want to do it the way that we want to do it, then we can nope out at any time. So that's what's really great about this. As Mr. Butts pointed out earlier, we get to call the shots. They need us more than we need them, and they weren't shy about making that clear to us. But obviously, this is something that is beneficial to everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean, at the very least, all of the alternative parties to get something like this across. And I did specifically point out, you know, if they were married, they use an example of Germany's parliamentary system where they have 800 and some odd representatives or something. And Mr. Strachan had pointed out that the last thing that we want to do is increase representation or the scope of government. That's not going to be beneficial, and that's not something that we stand for. So they were open to anything. So they're open to whatever avenue they believe is best and whatever we feel comfortable with. At the minute that we stop feeling comfortable with how they're representing us or doing anything, then we're good to go. I asked some questions about who they were affiliated with based on their advisors and their board. They answered them. I won't say who, just because it's a recorded call, but they were all too quick to throw them under the bus because they got a very clear, they gleaned from context that I did not particularly care for this person. So they really want us to join this thing. Now, I'm okay with it as long as it makes sense for us again, but this would kind of be around the same thing. We would create a special committee for ProRep. There's nothing to say that the same members can't be on both or additional members can't be on this, but their big ask was one quarterly meeting, 2-hour-ish meeting, I guess, once a quarter, where everyone gets together, discusses the viability of this moving forward and what it would look like, what the proposal or the presentation is to get this on the ballot and, what we're actually advocating for. So I would like to, so that's what I would be proposing here. Mr. Alvstead.
So what I'm hearing, this sounds like a plan to go to the legislature with a proposal that would reduce the power of the people in the legislature. I mean,
No.
Seems no.
No, it would be a ballot measure. It would be a ballot measure that we would be something that we'd be trying to get on the ballot for people to and pitch to the general population so that get it on the ballot for hopefully 2025 or 2026 and probably 2026 and, have people vote in this system.
That just with signatures, we don't need the legislature's approval.
I honestly don't remember. I've had so many. Does anyone remember that was on that call that can speak, that can answer the vice chair's question? Or that watched the presentation after the fact?
Can you repeat the question?
Can this be pulled off without the legislature's approval?
Yes, California allows for direct initiatives, like direct voter initiatives.
What I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be kind of the same thing. We can join and we can kind of put it all out on the table. And the minute that we're not comfortable with something, we can bounce. But they are specifically requesting, should we sign on to this officially? They would be requesting their major ask is to put our party logo on their website and say, the Libertarian Party of California is on board with this, with our coalition. And of course, the minute that we're not, if it comes to that, because they want to increase the size and scope of representation or whatever, and we're vehemently against it, then we can say, nope, now you cease and desist, and this collaboration is done now. Like, you go your way, we'll go our way, and maybe we'll reconvene on an issue that we can agree with, or that we can agree on as far as how we move forward with it. Mr. Brown.
I'm just curious, what are people's opinion on whether or not this is a good, I have some concerns about the group maybe and some of the other people involved, and what it looks like to associate with them, but that's one thing. But the other, maybe more central question I have is, do people feel like this is a good approach? I can see the appeal for us to support this kind of thing. Do other people have really developed thoughts on this proportional representation as a ballot measure?
We'll do Mr. Strachan and Mr. Ham, who I really wish would have been able to make that call, but I know that his schedule didn't allow. He was ready to throw blows, but Mr. Strachan, Mr. Ham, then Mr. Butts.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think this is really potentially quite interesting. I mean, I think there is potential in the idea of PR, and I think the collaborative effort and making common cause and making a coalition with parties that is something that we've talked about in, for example, the strategy document. And it seems to me this actually gives us an opportunity to make common cause with the left side of the spectrum, because the left side of the spectrum, I think there's a fair amount of support for PR, because they think that it's vaguely European. They think it'll help the Greens. And I think they've reason to think that. That is actually how it has turned out in a lot of European countries, including Scotland. But getting rid of top two, which this would entail if it went through, has to be, it's killing us. So I think it's absolutely worth the effort. I would personally, if there's to be another ad hoc committee, I would like to be on it to do this if possible. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Strachan. Mr. Ham, we've been waiting for this one.
Yeah. So I before I was even on the XCOM, when I don't know, it was like on the program committee or something, they reached out and I talked to them. My concern with them is that it's anti-libertarian. What they're looking to do is they're getting away from the top two system to replace it with, we redistrict the state into new assembly districts, and you vote for a party instead of a candidate, and then the party decides who's going to represent that district in the legislature. Now there's no mechanism in place.
Sorry, can you say that? Can you repeat yourself one more time? I'm sorry. Start from the beginning.
So basically, when I talked to them, they want to redistrict the state into a new assembly districts. And then instead of voting for a candidate, you vote for the party. And then based off of the percentage of the vote that the party gets, they get that percentage of representatives from that district. Each district gets X amount of representatives. And so the party decides who sits in the legislature. There is no mechanism in place for independence. It forces people to choose a party. And what's really interesting is one of the guys leading it says he's not part of a party, which is like, okay, then why would you give up your representation? The other guy, who was at the time the vice mayor of Albany up in the Bay Area, is a Democrat. So when you have a state that has a vast, I just don't see like this benefiting us. I see this benefiting Democrats more. There's more registered Democrats, or at least Democrat aligned people. So when you're in a hyper polarized environment, like political environment, like we are today, and most people, except for us here, are either pushed into the red camp or the blue camp, in order to vote and have your voice heard, it's going to force you to just vote for, people are just going to vote for Democrats based off of brand. And now those Democrats who have a super majority and are failing, those candidates don't get voted out. They don't have to be held accountable. The party just gets to choose who they want. And so I don't like this at all. I would actually actively fight something like this.
Interesting. That wasn't the impression that I got based off that meeting. It seems like they may have shifted either how they're pitching it or what their approach is, but that is an interesting insight. Mr. Butts.
Before I was giving what I want to say, I want to get clear what Garrison just said. So basically, the California DNC gets to handpick their Democrats to put in power over any moderate Democrats that may have won a seat. That's what Garrison was getting at, right?
For him.
Yeah. So it's correct, Mr. Butts. The way it works is you no longer vote for the candidate, you vote for the party. And the party, based off of whatever percentage you get, right, in the election, that's how many representatives that party gets to put forward, and the party decides who those people are. not the people. So you're not voting for an individual, you're voting for a party, and the party decides. Now, that might get 1 or 2 libertarians more in the state assembly, but that's going to give a whole lot more influence to probably the Democrats, because most people in California, though they're not registered with the Democrat Party, they tend to vote that way. We can see that. And it's just going to take away representation from the communities. And most importantly, as libertarians, we should all agree that nobody should be forced into a party or forced to align with a party just to have your voice heard in local government. You should be able to choose the person based off of their merits, and you can't do that anymore.
Okay. So yeah, I definitely I'm definitely going to get that cleared up if I'm a part of any talks with them. And just like well, and if that's not what they're going for now, why did they change their tact? Like if you know, like what they talked to you about before versus what they talked to us about last week or whenever it was. I want to find, if it's changed, I want to know why it changed. And not trying to like sneak it in or whatever. So I had thought of some questions that I had brought up when we were just talking afterwards, that I wish I had thought of while they were there. So I'd like to know like how pro rep would have affected Tom Nichols' race or Kelly Cardin's race. You know, like Tom got like 35%, you know, of the vote for a seat. You know, it almost sounded like they were trying to say that Tom would have gotten 35% of the seat or something. And so I want to make sure that that's very clear on, like, you know, what direct impact would have had on our top races. Would Shane, Francisco, and Amanda had won their city council races in Hanford? You know, would Kelly have been able to continue his county supervisor campaign on into November instead of cutting it off at the primary in June? And like, you know, what does 25% of a vote in this proportional representation, what does that mean? Like 25% of a seat? That doesn't make any sense. So you know, thinking about it afterwards, I've got a lot more questions than I'm like happy with. But I definitely like any, you know, I'm definitely with Craig of like, you know, any kind of way we can attack this 2-party system, I'm all for. But change doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, you know. You know, we can change, and you know, change can be bad or good, you know, it just depends. So change isn't inherently good. It can always get worse.
We're at time. I'm going to motion to extend by 10 minutes. I think we can cover this in 10 minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second to extend time.
Seconded by Mr. Alvarez. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Okay, I do have some thoughts on this. That what Mr. Ham said didn't seem to me what I understood from the call, but I do think that we need clarity on this. I'll let Mr. Alvarez go, then Mr. Brown, and I think I might have a solution that might be appeasing to everybody, but I'll let them speak first.
Got it. I just wanted to say it's not like we're signing on to this by voting on it tonight. I feel even, let's say Mr. Ham's interpretation is the correct one, and that's what ProRep is trying to do by being a member of the coalition, especially being like one of the big dog members in the coalition. We're in a much better position to steer it towards a solution that's more workable for libertarians than them. Like, if we don't participate in this coalition and they get it and it plays out exactly how Mr. Ham says they're planning to influence elections, then like we cut ourselves out of being a part of the process and a possibility to shift it in a way that could benefit us.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think we would want proportional representation in whatever kind of committee they operate in based on the type of membership we have or something like that, right? We wouldn't want to be able to be outvoted by the other people on this in this coalition, especially if we're so much larger, right? So I like the idea of decentralizing power into more hands and allowing for a wider array of thought, but I don't exactly like the idea of centralizing that power into the political cartels by necessity, by the necessity of the way the system is set up. And I see Mr. Ham's point that I don't see how it could work as an individual candidate running in this type of system. Because it's like you have several, you get X number of this many people in this party are appointed based on the total number of seats divided by the total number of votes. Unless you voted for like 50 people, I don't see how you could do that. Although I don't suppose I've thought about this as much as a lot of other people. So I'd be curious to hear what their response to that would be.
Okay, Mr. Strachan.
Thank you. Just to say, I think what Mr. Ham is describing is essentially a pure proportional representational system, which I don't think actually is in place anywhere. I think in most PR systems in Europe and elsewhere, certainly in Scotland had, where I grew up, Scotland had essentially first past the post Westminster constituencies, where the person who got the most votes, the candidate who got the most votes won, even if they got 40% of the vote. Under PR, you still have individual candidates who run, and if they win, get the most votes on the day they're elected. But there is a top-up list, which is the party list system, which I guess is called additional member voting. And then basically you vote for a candidate, and then you go over to vote for the party list. And based on the amount of votes they get in the list, you get people who've lost out. So say, you know, a winning candidate gets 40%, and 4 other candidates split the 60% between them. Okay, all those 6% of votes under first past the post system are wasted. Under a list system, you go over to the list, and they are able to elect a top-up member. So it's an additional member system. It doesn't break the link between individual candidates and the constituents. Individuals can still run, but there is additional additional representation awarded to parties who perform well enough on the lists.
Okay. I think I have a solution that might be appeasing to everybody, even Mr. Ham. Probably maybe especially Mr. Ham. So I think we can do this. I would propose, what I'd like to do is people that would be interested, if this committee were theoretically to be formed, we won't take action on this tonight. I would like to know who would be willing to be on this committee, and before we do anything, so anything would happen in July, we'd make an official committee in July, but that doesn't mean that we can't get the ball rolling, which means that what I would like is whoever would want to be on this special committee to meet with me offline. We'll set up another meeting with them and anyone else that wants to join, obviously, will have these questions answered and make sure that I came out of that meeting with a completely different understanding than what Mr. Ham portrayed. And it could be due to what Mr. Strachan said. Maybe there's a misunderstanding between Pure and what they're trying to do and what our role would be and all of that stuff. So I would like to get all of that hammered out. And then presumably the members of this committee, this would-be committee would meet, I would meet with this committee and with them, and we'd hammer all this out. Then we would present our findings to the XCOM in July. And then at that point, we would motion to create a special committee that would take this on, and then we'd have everything squared away. We'd see where everyone falls on this. And I would make the ask of Mr. Ham to be part of that cursory meeting that takes place whenever we schedule it between now and July, to really hammer that home. And really, I want someone that's really going to give a lot of pushback and make them uncomfortable and see if he's right, if the people that were on the call, you know, were right as far as what we understood, or if there's somewhere in between here, and to just gauge our level of comfort here. Does that sound amenable to everybody? Cool. So how many people would be willing to be on this committee? Would it be created and would be open or would be open to meeting with them again to hammer this out to make sure we're on the same page? Okay, so I have Mr. Butts, Mr. Alstead, Mr. Alvarez, Mr. Strachan. Mr. Ham, would you be willing, Mr. Miniletti, Mr. Ham, would you be willing to be on that call at least so that you can really do your thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would need time to like plan it. Like I'm in the middle of a campaign for a special election right now. And I'm on like actual local government committees here in my community. So if we can give me like a few weeks, even a month, right, to
that's fine.
Schedule that.
Yep. So let's do this. Keep your hands raised just really quickly. If the secretary would do me a favor, and no motion is being made, no committee is being made, but just so that we have people that would be, potential ambassadors. So we have Mr. Alvarez, Mr. Strachan, Mr. Minnelli, Ms. Halsey, Mr. Alvstead, Ms. Lepacek, and Mr. Ham. And so what I'll do is I will try to schedule a separate meeting with them. We'll do it around Mr. Ham's schedule because I think he's the most skeptical, and that's good. So, and Mr. Butts, if I didn't say already, Mr. Butts, but he's the most skeptical. So I'll be on that call as well. I'll be more of a listening, just listening in and making sure that all that goes through. So we have Mr. Alvarez, Mr. Strachan, Mr. Minnelli, Ms. Halsey, Ms. Lepacek, Mr. Butts, and Mr. Ham. And we'll schedule that before we sign on the dotted line, and we'll do all that. And then if we have a formal motion, we'll do the presentation in July. And if a formal motion comes as a result of that with a special committee, then we'll go ahead and move forward. So I guess this doesn't have to be in the minutes, but if you could keep this somewhere separate, so I know who decided to commit their souls to this. Cool.
So noted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Any further discussion on this topic? Almost done here, guys. So, okay, next item on the agenda is fundraising emails moving forward. So as you guys noticed, last month we sent out. Who just wants to?
Can I motion to amend the agenda to go over new business and the next meeting first?
Wait, what do you mean?
Can we do the last part of the agenda first before this one? Just in
That's
case.
going to take more time. We just have 3 things, and this is going to take like 2 minutes. That would take.
Okay. I wasn't sure how long this fund. I know it says 5 minutes, but.
So fundraising emails moving forward, I'm just going to say, you guys noticed, I sent 2 emails out last month for just minor fundraising, and I'm going to do these twice a month now. My hope is to do things twice a month. So one would be for the general fund, one would be for the CSE, and we can play off whatever things are happening that month. So obviously last month we had May the 4th and Cinco de Mayo. So I used those were both for the general fund. We made a few $100 over the course of a couple of days, which is more money than we had in the past. And these fundraising emails haven't gone out since I've been on the XCOM. So we're going to do these every 2 months and see what hits. If any of you guys have any ideas for something, so I'd like to do something for Flag Day. That would be the most obvious one, but I don't want to do like the actual flag because, whatever. I don't know how I feel about that. Something like funny with the Gadsden one, or if you guys have funny ideas or good ideas that you think, and as you guys noticed, I did very kind of specific things. So like for the Star Wars thing, I did the day that it came out, and that was like donate $19.77 or whatever. We can do fun stuff like that doesn't break the bank, but also gives people the option to donate more. We'll again do this for the general fund and for the CSC. So if you guys have any ideas moving forward, I would like to do 2 a month, ideally spread them out between like the beginning of the month or middle of the month to the end of the month. So we can start bringing in a little bit more cash. And this would very much help for, that's a little too on the nose, but maybe we'll see. But just if you guys think of anything at all, if you see one of these emails, if you have critiques about them, this could have been done better, or I wouldn't have done this, or whatever, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Email me privately, shoot me a text, hop on the phone with me, let me know. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with whatever I come up with, and it might not always be the best. But if you have something that you can provide for that, that would be great. But be on the lookout for those. And I would obviously encourage you to donate. On that note, before we end this topic, I would like to encourage everyone on the executive committee to consider becoming a monthly donor to the general fund or to the CSC moving forward. So the minimum is $10 on the state website. It's $5 for the CSE. Every little bit helps. If we have all 17 members doing at least $5 a pop, we can make a good amount of money, a good chunk of change over the year, and this will help supplement any sort of revenue or expenses for convention and other stuff. And people can earmark things for whatever they want. So I encourage you to do that and consider doing that for national as well. I just started doing that today. So now that I'm on the LNC, I kind of felt not obligated, but I thought it would be good to, even though I'm a lifetime member of both, to do a reoccurring donation. Every little bit helps, so I would encourage you guys to consider that. All right, last item on the agenda before new business is setting the next virtual XCOM meeting. So this will be in July. This will be a quote unquote quarterly meeting where we will present reports. Committees will be here to present the reports and hop on. So let's start looking at dates and knock this out. Mr. Lima did state that he preferred the end of July, which would be good for me. If we wanted to keep it weekday and this works for people, we could do 6. We could start earlier just to be on the safe side. Although the next meeting really shouldn't take this long if we're just going through reports. And the major thing is really just the, we did the hard part already. So I would propose the 27th at 6 p.m. if that works for people.
That is Miss LaPontek's birthday. I don't know if she would be.
The
Can we do it the week prior?
celebrate and to advance liberty. Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that really quickly. Miss Hallisey. Unless she just has her hand raised for funsies. Okay, it was just for funsies. Never mind. Okay, so not the 27th then. I don't know. Someone throw some dates out there.
20th.
20th at 6 p.m. I could do that. Who would that work for? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
May I ask for just a wee bit later in the evening, as I don't get off work until
What
about
time would
6
you prefer
p.m.
at 6?
Would 6:30 be okay?
We could do 6:30. I was just thinking, I don't mind going later if we do end up going. Usually this is the longest meeting I think that we've had in a while, but we got a lot of good stuff done. So I wouldn't mind, like we could do 6:30 or 7 if that works for people.
6:30.
Okay, so it seems like everyone can do this. Vice Chair's hand is not up. Okay, everyone can do that day. Cool. So is 6:30 okay with everyone, or you guys prefer 7? Or is there no difference? Let's do 6:30, and if we start a little bit later, it's not the end of the world if people roll in late. Cool. So the next meeting, so we'll do, okay, so I will move to have our next XCOM meeting on July 20th at 6:30 p.m. Do I have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Lima. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote, and let's do it this way. Are there any objections to having the next virtual XCOM meeting on July 20th at 6:30 p.m.? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next meeting, July 20th, 6 p.m. Are there any items of new business?
Didn't we have something from the beginning of the meeting that we wanted to talk about? I forgot what it was.
Yeah, so we have action items, which would be, so I guess usually I have an action items agenda list, but I didn't put it on. So we have 2 action items before the next meeting, which would be for Ms. Stump to kind of come up with a schedule for a system in which she'd like to use the PR system for, that we end up going with later on. We don't need to sign on to it immediately. So an action item for Ms. Stump to put the horse before the cart this time, to have some sort of action plan for what plan we would be using later on. And then the action item for me and the budget committee that I would present to you later, and also working with Ms. Stump, would be to come up with some sort of budget or figure out the best way for the CMC to be able to spend money, whether it's per press release, so we don't have to have a meeting and a formal motion every time, or just allocate up to a certain amount to the CMC budget to be able to do that. So I think just 2 action items outside of the one that only a few members have for the pro rep thing. But so I guess we'll call that new business, but new business is action items for next time. Cool, and then, I mean, off the record stuff where we can count it when we get back, and we're gonna discuss the convention stuff and make sure that we have a contract drafted and everything ready to go for the July 20th meeting. So I guess we could officially put that on there or not, but we're gonna discuss that anyway, but those are the big ones all the way across the board. Anything else for new business? Cool. We'll move on to the last item on the agenda, which is, of course, adjournments. We'll now entertain motions to adjourn.
I would like to
Second.
to adjourn.
Second.
The second came before the adjournment, but that's fine, Mr. Lima and Ms. Stump with the second. Are there any objections? This is not a debatable motion. Hearing none, we are adjourned at 9:51 p.m. Let me stop the recording.